Introduction. Humans are social animals. We can't not communicate. Even if we are silent, appearances and gestures speak for us. Not surprisingly, those who have learned to be an influential and persuasive communicator have had great success in life. This book will help you master a number of practical techniques of influence and persuasion in just 1 week. Techniques that will be useful in all aspects of your personal and professional life. It is important to understand at once how some people cause others to take certain actions. We are talking about spontaneous purchases, sudden donations to charities, and actions inspired by someone else's beliefs. People capable of influencing others know very well how to initiate a need for action. On Sunday, we will talk with you about the phenomenon of influence. It is important to remember that we form an idea of the other person in the first 4 seconds of acquaintance. In doing so, we rely solely on external appearance. The result is a stereotypical image, either positive or negative. So it is vital to project exactly the image that you need. We'll talk about that on Monday. On Tuesday, we will discuss how to become a truly authoritative person and still be accessible and respected by those around you. I will tell you about psychological experiments that were first conducted back in the 1960s. These experiments demonstrated how authority literally forces others to change their behavior, to do certain things. You will also learn about the Power of 3 technique and why it is so effective whether you need to close a deal, give an inspirational speech, or give a presentation. On Wednesday, we will talk about how to use the 3 elements of communication to achieve mutual understanding. Mutual understanding embodies the spirit of cooperation, and to achieve most goals in life, we need to cooperate with those around us. If you feel resistance from the person you are trying to influence, it means that there is no rapport between you. The NLP techniques described in this chapter will help you remedy this situation. On Thursday, you will learn how internal filters affect your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. By learning to recognize them in others, you will be able to get your ideas and suggestions to your interlocutors, bypassing the barriers you put up. On Friday, we will return to NLP again. This time we'll discuss a series of beliefs of perfection, based on the life experiences of those who have been very successful. You will learn how to internalize these beliefs. In addition, you will learn a number of case studies of language analysis, and this will give you a much better understanding of what people are really trying to tell you. The final chapter is devoted to persuasive techniques proven in practice. You will learn the 15 most persuasive words used in marketing. They are effective in both the spoken and written word. This book contains not only theoretical descriptions of technology. You will find examples from real life. I will tell you about those whose ability to influence people around them is not in the slightest doubt. And no one in the world. You will learn what the secret of such geniuses of influence is. And if they can do it, you can do it too. D. McClanahan. Sunday. Figuring out what influence is. According to the dictionary, influence can mean the following: the ability to influence others' perceptions of certain actions or images. The ability to leave a mark on someone, not literally. The ability to make another person act in a similar way to you. Influencing others is one of the main purposes of communication. This ability is especially important in the business world. As early as 1937, Dale Carnegie wrote in his book How to Win Friends and Influence People that communicating with people is the most serious problem we face, especially in business. He wrote, "It's the only way in our world to get someone to do something so that they will want to do it themselves. There is no other way." Today, we will analyze a number of factors that enhance the effect of influence. These factors were used by people as different as Sir Winston Churchill and Sir Bob Geldof. We'll also talk about what influences you, whether you make decisions with your head or your heart. We'll also discuss how to sell yourself if you want to make a favorable impression on those around you. What influences your decisions? How long have you had to buy something that you just wanted, rather than an objective necessity? Perhaps at that moment a certain inner voice went into justification mode. He began to think up reasons why you should have the object of your desire. Before you knew it, you had already made the decision to buy it, you spent the money, and the decision was yours. Maybe it was the act that made you feel good. Or maybe a day or two later, you were sobered up, wondering what made you pay the price. Whatever your feelings about your decision, it was influenced by your personality type. Here's a list of the different personality types that influence shopping decisions. Think about what applies to you. Gadget fan. If something new appears in a stylish design, and it is considered fashionable to have it, then the gadget fan must get hold of this thing at all costs. He needs to maintain his image. If Apple releases another iPhone, such a person will be first in line for a purchase. He may even pay someone to stand in line all night so that in the morning the fan will be one of the first to enter the store. The gadget fan doesn't even need to know what new features this iPhone has. If it's new, it just has to be the best, improved version of the latest model, and he should have won right away. When sales of Apple's iPhone 5 began in London, among the people lined up ready to pay £599 was a man who explained his purchase this way to a journalist. I just bought an Audi A6, and the only phone compatible with that car is an iPhone 5 in a stylish aluminum case. Such people make decisions with their heads, finding reasonable explanations for them. Connoisseur collector. Such people don't buy, they invest. They seek out high-end objects that they consider a means of investing money. They attend art auctions, or if the object they covet is a particularly valuable rarity, stay away and bid over the phone so that their presence will not affect the price. Although they love anything beautiful, connoisseur collectors may invest in items deemed desirable and valuable, even if they don't match their personal taste. Such items may include expensive wines. The connoisseur will keep that wine in the cellar at a certain temperature, but will never taste it. The main thing for him is admiration. The quality of collectibles reflects the connoisseur's personal ambitions. He wants to be seen as a customer with impeccable taste. Although image is very important to him, he makes purchasing decisions with his head rather than with his heart, because for him any purchase is an investment. 7. Theme collector. Such people consider themselves collectors like connoisseurs, but their collections are related to certain themes. It can be Star Wars, souvenirs related to the royal family, Barbie dolls released at different times. Since the size of their collection is unlimited, they are constantly adding something. Sometimes the treasures take up all the available space of their homes. They look for items in thrift stores, at sales, electronic auctions, or themed conventions. Purchases are always influenced by the heart rather than the mind. On trend. Such people follow celebrities closely. They read magazines where they can find the latest gossip. When they notice that their idol has set a new trend, a new hairstyle or tattoo, used a new cosmetic procedure, appeared with a new fashion accessory, or dressed in a different style, these people immediately do the same thing. They hope to touch someone else's glory by imitating their idols. In addition, they like to be on trend by acquiring something new and stylish. The higher the image of the idol, the more a person wants to imitate him. A great example of such an idol is the Duchess of Cambridge. As soon as she puts on a suit from a fashionable store, the sales of that suit increase dramatically, both in the store itself and on the internet. Such people buy with their heart. They don't even think about what the real reasons are that made them make a particular purchase. Sometimes this behavior has very serious negative consequences. Think, for example, of the fashion for small dogs in handbags. For the first time, a doggy was put in a purse by the heroine of the movie, Blonde-in-Law. Then other celebrities followed suit, particularly Paris Hilton. And those who followed the trend began to treat dogs as fashion accessories rather than pets. As a result, the dogs developed serious behavioral problems. The Battersea Dog Shelter told me that they received many small dogs with similar problems. Impulsive buyer. Impulsive shoppers are easily influenced and persuaded by others. They are easily influenced by discounts and are often fans of shop on the couch programs. They spend money under the influence of their emotional state. When they are sad, they buy something to unwind. When they are happy, they do a lot of shopping to make a real holiday. When they go to the store with a friend who needs to buy something, they shop, convincing themselves that it would be rude not to join in, and in fact they deserve it. Whatever that it is. Unfortunately, impulse purchases often turn out to be irrational. Such a person may have a closet full of clothes they have never worn. The habit of spending and spending and spending can lead them to total financial ruin. A great example of this is the famous soccer lottery winner Viv Nicholson. In 1961, she won £152,319, £5 million at today's exchange rate, but a few years later found herself completely destitute. Such people always shop under the influence of their heart. Lovers of self-improvement. In the constant pursuit of personal development, material success, or spiritual enlightenment, such people buy an enormous number of paper books, e-books, training programs, CD and DVD sets on their chosen subject. They are often willing to travel anywhere in the world to attend a lecture by their favorite teacher or guru. They settle in ashrams and heed every word of their mentor. These people think of their purchases as investments, and it must be said that some of them do use the knowledge they receive and achieve everything they dream of in life. However, most of these people simply accumulate books in such quantities that any library would envy. In addition, they have a large collection of CDs and DVDs. As long as they feel these quests are changing them, these people keep learning and buying because the answers to their questions are out there somewhere. It only takes time to find them. They make intuitive buying decisions in search of fulfillment and happiness. And of course, they are guided by their heart. In this tip, in order to influence other people, especially when we want to sell them something, we have to offer them something that is of value to them. That's why it's so important to understand their personality type and what makes them decide to buy. Personality and perception of value. You've probably noticed that only the first two personality types make decisions with their heads, and only one of them invests in purchases that have the potential to increase in value. However, value is the common denominator for all six types. So what turns desire into need? It is the perception of value. Each personality type sees some value in their potential purchases. Each develops a need that can only be satisfied by the purchase of that item. Let's go back to personality types to see what value they see in their objects of desire. The gadget fan is very susceptible to the influence of his peers. He has an innate need to be the leader of the pack. This desire is so strong that it penetrates his mental DNA, so that the decision to buy becomes a logical, consistent action. The value of owning the most modern, superior, sparkling gadget is that this object satisfies his undeniable need. 7. The connoisseur collector is always focused on the financial value of a potential purchase. He evaluates the purchase in terms of future return on investment. He can buy a Picasso painting. Although he does not like it at all, he understands that whether it hangs on the wall of his house or not, it is an acquisition whose value will only increase over time. A thematic collector has a passion for his chosen subject. When he sees a new object of desire, especially if it is something that is not yet in his collection, he immediately rushes towards the cherished goal. His heart starts beating more often, and an inner smile arises in him. Such a person appreciates his treasures and attributes great value to them, as they bring him true happiness. It is difficult for him to part with even a part of collectibles, although the size of the collection may become simply immense. Those who follow trends are looking for their own identity. They lack the courage to be original and prefer to imitate those who set new, desirable trends. Since their idols are most often well known and admired by everyone, these people feel that imitation will make them popular too, just by dressing appropriately or doing something. They crave the feeling of being admired by everyone, and anything that can evoke such a feeling is of great value to them. The impulsive shopper responds to emotion with ease. He invests in something that either changes an undesirable emotional state or reinforces a desirable state and increases its duration. For example, he spends a vacation in Spain and is insanely happy. On his last day, he is seized by a burning desire to bring home something that will keep him feeling that happiness. He rushes into the souvenir shops and sees the object of his dreams, a straw donkey the size of a 5-year-old child, and even in a wide-brimmed hat. This is just what he needs. Of course, it's not easy to bring home a souvenir like this, but now it adorns the foyer of his house. It may seem silly to you, but every time our impulsive customers pat the donkey on the head, sweet memories of their wonderful vacation in Spain are awakened in their hearts. Lovers of self-improvement in search of self-fulfillment and the meaning of life place value on anything that can help them do so. They feel that the gurus they have chosen have successfully completed the journey they are still embarking on. They are eager to learn and repeat everything their teacher has done along the way. If a guru is happy to share his knowledge in a book, CD, or DVD, if he gives a seminar or a lecture somewhere, self-improvement enthusiasts instantly rush there, and every scrap of knowledge and advice seems invaluable to them. The role of the champion. 7. A completely different situation with the value of need satisfaction occurs in times of crisis. People are looking for someone who would be a champion for them, who would establish control and lead them forward into a happy future. The person who fulfills this role is given great value, and in this position, he acquires tremendous influence. Here are two excellent examples of such champions: Winston Churchill and Bob Geldof. Churchill's influence. During World War II, Winston Churchill was Britain's champion. The inspirational speeches of this distinguished orator became a psychological stimulus for the British at precisely the moment when it was needed. Churchill made two of his most famous speeches during the dark days of 1940, and his voice had an unwavering confidence and firmness. The first speech was delivered on June 4th, a few hours after the evacuation of Dunkirk. 338,226 British and French soldiers, cut off by the German army, were rescued from the beaches of Dunkirk by a hastily assembled fleet of 850 ships. Many of these ships were small pleasure yachts. The smallest was only 4.5 meters long. But they all played a role in saving lives. The miracle of small ships in Britain has become a true legend. Some of the surviving ships took part in a celebratory display on the Thames in 2012 to mark Queen Elizabeth's Diamond Jubilee. By that time, they were 72 years away from their moment of stardom. Here is a short excerpt from Churchill's famous speech after the evacuation from Dunkirk. "We can't lose. We will fight to the end. We will fight in France. We will fight on the seas and oceans. We will fight in the air with increasing confidence and strength. We will defend our island, no matter what it costs us. We will fight on the shores. We will fight in the landing places. We will fight in the fields and in the city streets. We will fight in the hills. We will never surrender." Churchill called the result of the evacuation a miracle, and British journalists called it a disaster turned into a triumph. The expression, "the spirit of Dunkirk," still lives on in Britain. It is a reference to the people who rallied to overcome difficulties and defeat the enemy. Churchill gave his second outstanding speech on August 20th, when the crisis of the Battle of Britain came. German planes attacked the Royal Air Force airfields in the south of the island. Speaking of English military pilots, Churchill used the expression, "so few." In every home on our island, in our empire, and throughout the world, except in the abodes of the criminals who have unleashed this war, men are filled with deep gratitude for the British airmen who, without fear of the numerical superiority of the enemy, constantly engaged in difficult missions and in mortal danger, have changed the course of world war by their heroism and devotion. Never before in the history of war have so many been indebted to so few. The power of the pause. Churchill skillfully used a very effective method of increasing the importance of his speeches and attracting the attention of his listeners. He made excellent use of pauses. Read this fragment aloud, exactly as it is written. "Never before in the history of wars have so many been indebted to so few." Now read it out loud again, pausing where there are dots. Feel the difference. Never before in the history of wars have so many been indebted to so few. The same phrase suddenly took on a deep meaning, a weight that really touched people emotionally. Churchill was well aware of the power of pauses, and made excellent use of them. Bob Geldof's influence. Another, even more surprising, champion, appeared in 1984. On the evening of October 23rd, rock singer Bob Geldof, like many thousands of Britons, watched the 9 o'clock news on the BBC. Like thousands of others, he was shocked by the report of human suffering and the many casualties in drought, disease, and famine in Ethiopia. He thought, 30 million people are dying, and we in Europe are spending taxpayer money to produce food we don't need, even more money to store it, and then even more money to destroy it. It's a disgrace to us. Bob Geldof considered this a crime. He was angry, and his anger drove him to act. He had to do something. The British people wanted to do something, but didn't know how. Geldof had the answer. Within weeks, he assembled a group of famous Band Aid singers, wrote and recorded "Do They Know It's Christmas?" along with the Feed the World chorus. The single was released on December 7th and became the fastest-selling single in history. It managed to raise £8 million, $12 million. The following summer, Geldof initiated Live Aid concerts in Britain and the United States, which were broadcast worldwide by satellite. By this time, he had already garnered the support of the country's most famous people. Prince Charles and Princess Diana, along with 72,000 other people, attended the Wembley concert. More than 1.5 billion people in 160 countries watched the broadcast, the largest broadcast in history. In between the musicians' performances, Geldof made a passionate appeal to the audience. "Send money, people are dying out there." He shouted, he swore, and it worked. There were 200 phone lines in Britain that accepted credit card donations. Geldof personally got a call from members of Dubai's ruling family. They made the biggest donation of £1 million, $1.5 million. In the U.S., the Beach Boys' 5-minute performance at Philadelphia's John F. Kennedy Stadium received 22,000 donations. The campaign managed to raise £40 million, $60 million. In 1986, Bob Geldof was knighted. Live Aid's success was possible because Geldof showed people a real way to help those who could not help themselves. Our donations were able to save lives and alleviate the guilt that plagued us. And that represents a tremendous value to us. Tip: if you want to influence others, you must infect them with your passion and conviction. Remember that you yourself are established because of your own emotional need. Summary: today we explored what influence is and how it plays out in our lives. We looked at it in the context of how a desire can be transformed into a need if enough value is added to it. This manifests itself in our buying decisions for a variety of reasons, which proves to us that there are 6 types of buying personality. We are influenced and inspired by champions, people who step forward and lead us when there is an emotional need for such a leader. Winston Churchill and Bob Geldof are nothing like each other, yet they both played the role brilliantly. Value is a vital component of influencing others. To influence others, we must offer them something of value. Whether it's a product or a balanced argument that can persuade people to do or feel something, value is what plays a major role. Questions: you will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. What is influence? A. The ability to leave a mark on someone's life. B. The ability to influence the thinking of others. C. The ability to not let people do what they want. D. The ability to get people to agree with you. 2. Which personality type makes purchases with their head? A. Gadget fans and collector valuers. B. Thematic collectors and people following the trend. C. Impulsive shoppers and self-improvement enthusiasts. D. Gadget fans and trend followers. 3. How do people justify their purchases? A. They are influenced by people capable of persuasion. B. They copy other people's purchases. C. They need to keep up with fashion. D. They turn their desires into needs. 4. Which personality type focuses on a particular topic? A. People following the trend. B. Thematic collectors. C. Gadget fans. D. Impulsive shoppers. 5. What does each personality type need in the buying process? A. Feel the value of the potential acquisition. B. Follow your own group, not be leaders. C. The possibility of getting back your investment in the future. D. Admiration of their purchases by others. 6. What type of person focuses on the possibility of a return on your own investment? A. Self-improvement enthusiasts. B. Collector appreciators. C. Impulsive shoppers. D. People who follow the trend. 7. What type of person seeks self-actualization? A. Self-improvement enthusiasts. B. Collector appreciators. C. Impulsive shoppers. D. Thematic collectors. 8. What was Churchill's value as a champion? A. In support of English pilots. B. In victory at the Battle of Britain. C. In the ability to inspire people in times of crisis. D. In helping people overcome difficulties. 9. What was Bob Geldof known for before Live Aid? A. He worked in television. B. He was a rock singer. C. He knew how to change people's lives. D. He raised taxes to relieve people's suffering. 10. What is Bob Geldof's value as a champion? A. He gave people the opportunity to save other people's lives and remove their guilt. B. He organized a great rock concert. C. He organized credit card donations. D. He received the title of knight. Monday. Learning to project the right image of yourself. The ability to influence effectively and powerfully is akin to public speaking. We are most influenced by people who do the talking. That is, we need consistency between the signal and the person who is sending us that signal. Although Bob Geldof, of whom we spoke yesterday, seemed a very unsuitable candidate for the role of global fundraiser and humanist, in his appearance, demeanor, and communication style, he has remained true to his primary role as a rock star. We might call him a furious rock star inspired by a high purpose. The pieces of the puzzle came together, we got caught up in his mission, and it all worked out. Today we will discuss the consequences of absolute coherence, the complete fusion of image, signal, and behavior, and incoherence, that is, the state in which all elements conflict with one another. You will learn how and why people use stereotypes, and how this phenomenon can be used to advantage in the process of influencing. I will tell you about two people who have each, in their own way, had a profound impact on the lives of all of us. One overcame stereotypical reactions and the other led the conversation. What are stereotypes? We are human beings, and we have an innate desire to make sense of things. We need to know what is going on around us and how things are affecting us, so that we can determine responses and behavior. This brings us a sense of well-being. This state is often referred to as the comfort zone. As part of this process, we are used to drawing quick conclusions about our surroundings. All we have to do is see a person for 4 seconds, and we are ready to make our own impressions and assumptions about them. 7. We believe we can determine at a glance. Age, occupation, financial situation, lifestyle, level of education, ethnicity, marital status. In addition, as soon as the speaker begins to speak, we draw additional conclusions about his origins, his place of residence, and even about his level of intelligence, for which we need only recognize his accent or dialect, evaluate his vocabulary and his style of speech. At this point, our ego comes into play. We begin to make a comparison between the person we are talking to and ourselves, and this allows us to determine whether this person meets our requirements. Is he superior or inferior? How should we behave with him? At this point, there is a danger that we will begin to act under the influence of our ego and false assumptions. If this happens, our behavior is not the most appropriate or optimal, and this makes it impossible to have an effective influence. The positive purpose of stereotypes. However, instant stereotyping also has a positive purpose. The process can protect us from danger. If we detect some kind of danger, the brain, through the hit or run response, allows us to take the necessary action. Imagine that you are walking down the street late at night, and a massive figure emerges from the shadows right in front of you. You immediately try to figure out if the person in front of you is a friend or an enemy. If the stranger has a threatening appearance, your brain immediately sends a signal. Danger! The fight or flight response kicks in, adrenaline surges, and you can either tense up and stand up for yourself or rush away. In your mind live the templates of friend and foe, and at such a moment you need to assess the situation. You compare the stranger's appearance with these templates and find that he fits the enemy template. From that point on, you apply the source of trouble stereotype to that person. You allow yourself to be influenced by appearances and make an assumption that may be at least 50% true. The first impression of a person persists for a long time, unless we receive convincing and powerful evidence to the contrary. Moreover, there is a thinker and a proof living in our brains. If the thinker thinks about something, the proofer gathers convincing evidence that confirms, yes, you're right. Once the thinker has formed a first impression, the proofer notices only the evidence that confirms that impression. Everything else is rejected as false. And so it goes on until the thinker reaches a different conclusion. But for this, something dramatic usually has to happen that turns our view 180 degrees. Overcoming the stereotype. Susan Boyle. Susan Boyle is a Scottish singer who attracted worldwide attention when she appeared on the television show Britain's Got Talent in April 2009. Susan was born in 1961. She had difficulties with her studies. Children disliked and harassed her, and she dropped out of school without an education. Her main passion was singing. She won several local amateur singing competitions, and her mother advised her to take part in a television show so that she could learn to perform in front of large audiences. Unfortunately, Susan's mother died before she even auditioned, and Susan almost gave up on the idea. But her vocal coach convinced her to get over herself. Performing in the show was Susan's first public performance since her mother's death. When Susan, a very ordinary, overweight woman of 48, took the stage and said she dreamed of becoming a successful professional singer like Ellen Page, the audience laughed. The stereotype was formed within the first 4 seconds. None of the audience thought Susan could be a talented singer. The judges clearly shared their skepticism. And then the candidate with a very peculiar appearance began to sing, "I Dreamed a Dream," from the musical Les Miserables. When Susan's pure, clear mezzo-soprano voice filled the theater, the audience's jaws dropped and their eyes went up to their foreheads. No one had expected to hear such a wonderful, beautiful voice. Applause erupted 4 seconds after Susan hit her first note. When she finished, they gave her a standing ovation. Everyone jumped out of their seats, even the judges. Judge Amanda Holden said that Susan's performance completely overturned the originally cynical attitude of the audience and judges. She called it the greatest awakening. After the television broadcast of Britain's Got Talent, Susan was invited to appear on Oprah Winfrey's show. She performed there via satellite. That year, Britain's Got Talent was seen by 17.3 million viewers. Although Susan was the favorite, she lost the lead to a dance group. Competition, what can you do? Susan has had tremendous success, becoming a professional singer. She performs in different countries, releasing discs in the UK and the USA. Her debut album turned out to be the fastest-selling album by an aspiring singer in decades. Susan Boyle's story is a perfect example of how an initial stereotypical impression based on appearance can be completely false. Such an impression can be overcome by explicit evidence to the contrary. But Susan is the exception that proves the rule. You only get one chance to make a first impression. It's much better if the first impression is exactly what you hoped it would be. It's much harder to prove people wrong and get them to change their perception of you. 7. Tip. Tens of millions of people around the world have watched Susan Boyle's performance on YouTube on Britain's Got Talent. Watch it too, if you haven't already. It will be a very inspiring and emotional experience. What is consistency? An example of a woman whose appearance and behavior are 100% in line with her ideals, and this gives her the ability to influence the world, is Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop. Although Anita is an ex officio executive in a multinational corporation, She never acts according to the stereotype. She does not wear strict business suits, high-heeled shoes, or strict leather briefcases. Such an image would go against the concept of the Body Shop brand and would look fake. A short story about Anita Roddick will show you the implications of alignment. Anita believes that business should benefit the world and society. The mission of the Body Shop reflects her feelings and incorporates her own values. The company's declaration begins, "We dedicate our efforts and our business to bringing about social change and changing attitudes toward the environment." The Body Shop's mission has impacted the world. The company has brought attention to global issues. It has advocated support for third world countries, and it has spoken out against animal testing of cosmetic products. As Anita lives and works in accordance with her beliefs and values, she will always remain a symbol and synonym of the Body Shop. Matching inside and outside, Anita Roddick. Anita Roddick was born in 1942 in a bomb shelter. A family of Italian immigrants had fled Naples on the eve of World War II and settled in the town of Littlehampton in Sussex County. Anita grew up by the sea. She had always felt like an outcast, drawn to outcasts and rebels like her boyhood idol James Dean. At the age of 10, she read a book about the Holocaust, which made a deep impression on her. After receiving a teacher's degree, she went to work in an Israeli kibbutz and then to other countries of the world. She visited almost primitive societies of farmers and fishermen, where she learned firsthand the rituals of body care. Her military childhood left a deep mark on her memory. She remembered how everything was economized, how everything was used and recycled to the max. Anita Roddick became a staunch environmentalist. She created a small line of body care products. She opened her first The Body Shop in Brighton in 1976. 6 months later, a second store opened. Gradually, The Body Shop became a worldwide franchise, and today 77 million customers all over the world use these stores. Anita retained the appearance and demeanor of a spoiled child for the rest of her life. Her natural beauty has become the perfect advertisement for her beauty products. She has always stood up for her ideals: social responsibility, respect for human rights, protection of the environment, protection of animals, creation of jobs in third world countries. All this is reflected in the values of her company. The company was one of the first to use ingredients that had not been tested on animals, and to actively cooperate with developing countries. For example, the moisturizing oil used in a number of products is extracted from Brazil nuts grown and harvested by Amazon Indian tribes. Anita has received many awards during her life. In 1988, she received the Order of the British Empire, and in 2003, she received a knighthood. But her most significant and important award was given to her in 1999 for her defense of the Ogoni tribe of Nigeria. Anita died in 2007. Having kept her promise, she bequeathed her fortune to charitable organizations. Presentation: the 4-second rule. The way you present yourself immediately determines how well you will be able to influence those around you. This table lists those aspects of your appearance that people will definitely pay attention to in the first 4 seconds of your acquaintance. Although it may seem obvious to you, neglecting any of these aspects can drastically ruin your first impression and reduce your chances of effectively influencing your new acquaintances. 7. Tip: sometimes a little thing like a stain on your tie or a chewed fingernail can greatly reduce the effectiveness of your influence on people. These little things make a huge difference. Take them seriously. Consult with professionals. To maximize the impact of your appearance and speech and therefore improve your ability to persuade and influence people, consider consulting with professionals. Image maker. The image maker will analyze the color palette and style, and help you choose the colors that will emphasize your strengths and increase your self-confidence. You should dress to make a good impression. Then clothing will enhance your ability to influence those around you. A good image maker will emphasize your visual charisma. I highly recommend using the services of such a specialist. Speech specialist. If you think your voice is interfering with your success, consider consulting a specialist. Many public figures have used such services. Margaret Thatcher, before she ran for the Conservative Party leadership, worked with such a professional. He markedly lowered the tone of her voice and the speed of her speech. As a result, her voice gained depth and power, which undoubtedly helped her become the first woman Prime Minister of Great Britain. Summary. Today we talked about the fact that in order to influence and persuade effectively, you have to project the right image. We discussed the stereotyping that forms the initial impression of the interlocutor during the first 4 seconds of the meeting. A perfect illustration of this is Susan Boyle's example. It proves that a negative stereotype can be overcome and changed. However, it takes extraordinary effort to overcome it. In most situations, it is important to make sure that your appearance and behavior are consistent with the signals you are sending. Otherwise, the wrong message will emerge. Do as I say, rather than do as I do. This noticeably reduces the effectiveness of persuasion. Perhaps you have noticed that politicians often do not follow this principle. In order to make the best impression in those critical 4 seconds, you have to take your appearance seriously. It's very important. My advice may seem obvious, but it is often forgotten. Consulting with professionals can also help you make a good first impression. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. What does consistency mean? A. Your image, signals, and behavior are at odds with each other. B. You cannot be stereotyped. C. Your image, signals, and behavior match each other. D. We like people who look like us. 2. How quickly do we make up our impressions of other people? A. During the first 4 seconds of the meeting. B. Within 5 minutes of the meeting. C. After a long conversation. D. As soon as they start talking. 3. What are the stereotypes based on? A. On the assumption of a person's financial status. B. On external appeal. C. On comparing yourself. D. On a person's appearance and speech. 4. What is the role of the ego in making assumptions about the other person? A. The ego never makes assumptions. B. The ego determines whether a person is above or below us. C. Ego ensures the validity of our assumptions. D. Assumptions play no role in our behavior. 5. What is the positive purpose of stereotypes? A. They protect us from potential danger. B. They promote the release of fight or flight hormones. C. They help build instant perceptions of other people. D. They increase our ability to persuade. 6. How can you overcome initial stereotypes based on appearance? A. With convincing evidence to the contrary. B. This is impossible. C. Ignoring first impressions. D. Forgetting what we thought at first. 7. How does coherence enhance our ability to make an impact? A. Reflecting and incorporating our values into all our actions. B. Showing the world our vision of business. C. Making a good impression in meetings. D. Ensuring an appropriate manner of dressing. 8. Why is the way we present ourselves to the world so important? A. It helps to relax. B. This provides the basis for effective influence on those around you. C. This puts us ahead of the competition. D. This gets rid of the natural outsider feeling. 9. What is the easiest way to make a good impression? A. Telling people to do as I say, not do as I do. B. Maintaining a lively appearance to show that we are in control. C. Paying attention to those aspects of your appearance that people will notice first. D. Generously using perfumes, lotions, or colognes. 10. What presentation rule do you need to remember forever? A. Dress appropriately for the audience you are speaking to. B. The heels don't matter, no one will notice them anyway. C. You should wear as much gold jewelry as possible to impress with your wealth. D. A weak handshake is a good thing because it shows your sensitive nature. Tuesday. Developing a commanding voice. So we've discussed what influence is, what factors determine its degree, both positively and negatively, and how important it is to project the right image so that those around you will have the very stereotypical impression you are hoping for. Today we will discuss how and why the command voice influences people. A study of authority was first conducted in the 1960s by Stanley Milgram and successfully repeated on television by Darren Brown in 2006. This study showed that people tend to obey a commanding voice, sometimes even without question or doubt. By recognizing the results of such experiments, you can increase your credibility while remaining approachable and respectable. You will also learn why Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech had such a powerful effect on people. I'll tell you how you can use the same tactic in your own presentations. We'll discuss techniques that will enable you to speak persuasively, firmly, and maintain control over even the most difficult and confrontational situations. We'll also talk about strategies for becoming a confident, effective, influential, and authoritative person. Who is your authority? Let's start by looking at a number of authority figures. Think back to your childhood and remember who your authority figures were. These people made a deep impression on you and inspired you, and you admired and respected them. When they asked you to do something, you did it willingly, without question. You listened to their advice and were guided by it in life. It could have been your parents or other relatives, teachers, friends or peers, neighbors or other members of the community. Choose 3 people you respect and write their names in the chart. Then identify the characteristics of each of them that inspired your respect and made you think of them immediately today. 7. Now repeat the exercise. This time, choose the people you consider authoritative today. Choose 3 people you have not yet chosen. You can add any famous people who meet this criterion. It doesn't matter that you have never met them. 7. Here are the most typical characteristics you may have noted. Good listener. Knowledge and competence. A very understanding person. The ability to inspire confidence. The capacity for empathy. Optimism in the face of uncertainty. A supporter of a cause important to me. Lack of arrogance, despite significant achievements. Sincere interest in me. Willingness to share ideas and solutions, even when he is busy with me. There is always time for me. Willingness to lead. Page. Faith in me and my ideas. Willingness to take full responsibility for your actions. The ability to lead by example. Readiness for support and encouragement. Preparedness for challenges. Courage. The desire to work to the best of your ability and to contribute to the success of others. Lightness, positivity, smiles. Ability to solve problems with innovative ideas. Never makes unreasonable or unfair demands. Generosity of spirit. Determination. Perhaps you have highlighted other qualities as well. What they have in common, however, is that they are the very qualities that we admire and respect. When we notice these qualities in another person, we are ready to recognize their authority, treat them with respect, and cooperate with them. When you think back to those who were your authority figures as a child, you have chosen people who were important to you during the most impressionable period of your life. It is possible that the qualities of those who are your authorities now are somehow different from the characteristics of your childhood authorities. Now analyze your lists and the qualities you have identified. How many of them do you possess yourself? The greater the number, the easier it is for you to become an authority for others. Tip: choose from the list a characteristic that you don't think you currently possess. Develop an action plan for mastering it. Milgram experiments. In the early 1960s, Stanley Milgram, a social psychologist at Yale University, conducted a series of experiments. He studied the participants' willingness to obey authority figures. The person in authority ordered the participants to perform actions that were contrary to their conscience and inner moral beliefs. There were 3 roles in the experiment. Experimenter: a scientist experimenter with authority. The teacher, a volunteer willing to obey the experimenter's orders, played this role. The student, a role played by an actor who pretended to be a volunteer and was a recipient of the actions performed by the teacher. The volunteer had to assume that the roles were assigned by lot. He and the actor drew folded sheets, but both had "teacher" written on them. The actor would only pretend that he got the role of student. Then the teacher and the student were taken to different rooms. They could communicate, but did not see each other. In some cases, the student told the teacher that he had cardiovascular problems. The teacher was then told that he had to teach the student a list of word pairs. The teacher first read the entire list to the student, and then began reading the first word from each pair, prompting the student to choose the second of 4 choices. The student pressed the button corresponding to the answer number. If the answer was wrong, the teacher pressed the button, and the student experienced an electric shock. With each wrong answer, the voltage increased by 15 volts. Before the experiment began, the teacher received a light electric shock so that he could imagine what his student would experience. Of course, the student sitting in the next room was not subjected to any electric shocks. The actor who played the part deliberately gave the wrong answers and then reacted to the shock received from the teacher with groans and cries of pain. With each increase in tension, the actor portrayed the pain more and more authentically. At times, he even began to beg for an end to the experiment. But the teacher received strict instructions from the experimenter, an authority figure, and continued to increase tension despite the severe pain experienced by the student. Over the course of the experiment, the volunteer teachers exhibited varying degrees of tension and stress. Each of them stopped at some point, experiencing doubt. Nevertheless, more than 60% of the participants continued the experiment and reached a level of tension that could theoretically have been fatal. Milgram and submission to authority. The following conclusions can be drawn from Milgram's experiment. 1. A person who has neither the ability nor the experience to make decisions, especially at a critical moment, leaves decision-making to someone he considers more authoritative. 2. If one perceives oneself as an instrument for the fulfillment of another person's wishes, one ceases to consider oneself responsible for one's own actions. 3. If experts tell people that everything is right, they think it is, even if it really isn't. Darren Brown's robbery. In 2006, as part of the Channel 4 British TV project, Robbery, Darren Brown repeated Milgram's experiments to determine which volunteers could take part in an armed robbery if ordered to do so. The results were virtually identical to those experiments. More than half of the participants continued to raise the voltage to the lethal level of 450 volts. 4 candidates remained in the final, and 3 of them carried out an armed attack on an armored car, even though they were armed with only toy pistols. After the shooting, all 4 participants were reprogrammed, ridding them of their temporary propensity for crime. This was done by Brown and another independent psychologist. After the program aired, feedback was very mixed, but the 4 participants in the finale stated that they enjoyed the entire process. They all called the event a positive experience. An audience survey conducted in 2011 showed that Heist proved to be Darren Brown's most popular program. Similarly, after Milgram's experiments, 84% of the participants said they were glad or very glad to take part. Many of them later sent Milgram letters of appreciation, and some even offered to help or wanted to join him. Authority and leadership. While it is certainly unlikely that you would want to manage people to the point where they start electrocuting others or going on armed robberies, it will still be useful for you to learn something about the nature of leadership or authority in a business environment. 1. When people find themselves in an environment of uncertainty, they not only want to be led, they like to be directed and told what to do. 2. Orders from a man who seems knowledgeable, experienced, and confident are rarely challenged. 3. Therefore, it is very important that the person in a leadership role have absolute personal integrity. Influence with the power of 3. Although this book is not written about sales techniques or making presentations, it is still worth talking about a principle that is an effective persuader, and therefore can be used in any situation where you need to make an impact. According to research, people need repetition to feel convinced. In addition, a magic number of these repetitions has been established 3. In sales, this is often used as a closing technique. The salesperson asks the potential buyer 3 questions, the answer to which is likely to be yes. The 4th question becomes closing the deal. Since the buyer has just answered the 3 questions in the affirmative, it is very likely that he will answer yes again. 7. The power of 3 in action. Q1. So, have I told you everything you wanted to know about this product? A 1. Yes. Q2. And you're okay with our free shipping? A 2. Yes. Q3. Great. So we can finalize the documents and turn them over to you right now. A 3. Yes. The same power of 3 principle works well in presentations. Usually a presentation has the following structure. 1. You need to say what you are going to say, introduction. 2. Then tell everything you were going to, content. 3. And then say what you just said, conclusion. This structure means that the content of the presentation is actually repeated 3 times, which allows for a deeper impression and better recall of the content. There are many ways to use the power of 3 in a presentation or speech. Martin Luther King and the power of 3. The American Baptist minister Martin Luther King, Jr. went down in history as the leader of the African American civil rights movement. He was an advocate of nonviolent civil disobedience. In 1964, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for fighting racial inequality through nonviolent means. He was active in the fight against poverty and the war in Vietnam. During the 1963 March on Washington, Martin Luther King won fame as one of the greatest orators in American history with his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Although it was only one of many speeches he gave, it was the one that people remembered him for. The power of 3 played a very important role in that speech. King didn't just use the power of 3 in reference to the phrase, "I have a dream." He used it 3 times, 9 times. Here is an excerpt from the famous speech where the key phrase is repeated 9 times. In spite of all the problems of the present and the future, I say to you, I still have a dream. A dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream. One day our country, having realized the true meaning of its faith, will be its embodiment. We firmly believe that universal equality requires no proof. I have a dream. One day in the Crimson Hills of Georgia, the descendants of former slaves will be able to share a meal of brotherhood with the descendants of former slave owners. I have a dream. One day even Mississippi, a state that is choking with scorching injustice, choking with scorching oppression, will be an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. One day my 4 children will wake up in a country where people are judged not by the color of their skin, but by their moral qualities. Today I have a dream. I have a dream. One day there, in Alabama, a violent racist state, a governor's state that is generous with speeches about non-interference in state affairs and non-recognition of the force of congressional laws. One day there, in Alabama, black boys and girls will hold hands with white boys and girls as if they were brothers and sisters. Today I have a dream. I have a dream. One day all valleys will become lakes, all hills will become heights, all mountains will become plains. The ways bumpy will become level, the ways crooked will become straight. The majesty of the Lord our God will shine, and the whole human race will be able to behold him. This is our hope. This is the faith with which I will return to the South. Using this phrase for the first time, King used it at the beginning of each of the 8 repetitions. It was a great tactic that made people remember the words and gave the speaker authority and power. 6. Bad habits. During your presentation, beware of the following and very common habits that can weaken the authority of your speech. Rare visual contact with listeners. A lot of in speech. Too quiet, those who sit behind you may not be able to hear you. Rocking on your toes. Turning your back to the audience to read what is projected on the screen behind you. Constant clicking of the ballpoint pen. The habit of fiddling with cufflinks. The habit of fiddling with jewelry. Constant scratching of the top of the head. Clap your hands at the end of each sentence. Hands in pockets. Curling a strand of hair on your finger. To make sure you have no such habits, rehearse your presentation several times beforehand. Rehearse your presentation one last time in front of someone who can evaluate your presentation, or record yourself on camera to evaluate your presentation yourself. Speak firmly, honestly, and convincingly. When confronted with an aggressive interlocutor or in a conflict situation, it can be difficult to speak persuasively and authoritatively. And that's where the structure called persuasive propositioning comes in. It is extremely effective. This structure increases your confidence and makes your interlocutors perceive you as an authoritative, respectable person. A persuasive sentence is an extremely useful tool that can be used at every opportunity. A persuasive sentence consists of 4 parts. 1. Briefly repeat your interlocutor's situation to show that you are listening and that you understood his position. 2. Then say, however. Never use the conjunction, but because it instantly erects a barrier to what you will say next. 3. Formulate your position. It may be different from that of the interlocutor, and it should be expressed openly. 4. Offer a mutually acceptable way out. You want a workable compromise, a mutually beneficial outcome that satisfies the needs of all parties involved. Here's a little example. I appreciate your hard work. However, your participation in today's meeting is vital to making important decisions. I would greatly appreciate it if you could come for 20 minutes to share with us the information you have. The final phrase always sounds very reasonable. Because you acknowledged at the outset the situation in which the interlocutor is in, it is difficult for him to refuse to cooperate. However, if you do not achieve the desired result at the first attempt, and especially if the interlocutor says, "Yes, but," and puts forward new arguments, the process will have to be repeated again. This time at the beginning of the design again briefly repeat the interlocutor's new situation. Summary. Today we discussed how to develop a commanding voice by taking someone with recognized authority as a role model. Stanley Milgram's experiment, later repeated by Darren Brown, proves that in certain circumstances people obey orders if they feel that orders are given by someone with knowledge and authority. If you transfer the same results to the business environment, you will notice that effective leaders are those whom people believe to be experienced and confident. The power of 3 is a persuasive strategy that works well in a variety of situations, including presentations, giving them particular persuasiveness and influence. Analysis of Martin Luther King's famous "I have a dream" speech shows that he used the key phrase 3 times for maximum effect. We also discussed the importance of intonation, bad habits to avoid, and techniques that allow the voice to sound firm, honest, and convincing. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. Who can be called an authority figure? A. Someone who is older than you. B. Someone who is not universally respected. C. Someone who impresses and inspires others. D. A person whose requests are easy for you to turn down. 2. Which skill is essential for an authority figure? A. Listening skills. B. Demonstrating constant busyness and lack of time for other people. C. Ability to speak as a specialist. D. The ability to subdue other people. What characterizes an authoritative person? A. Arrogance. B. The habit of making unreasonable demands on others. C. The ability to keep secrets. D. The ability to accept a challenge. 4. What were Milgram's experiments supposed to evaluate? A. Obedience to authority. B. Disobedience to the teacher. C. The way people learn. D. The way people react to electric shocks. 5. What roles did the participants in Milgram's experiments play? A. Experimenter, teacher, and student. B. Interrogator, teacher, observer. C. Investigator, victim, observer. D. Evaluator, learner, persuader. 6. What conclusions were drawn from Milgram's experiments? A. People allow those in authority to make decisions for them. B. When people see themselves as instruments for the fulfillment of another person's wishes, they cease to see themselves as responsible for their own actions. C. When experts say some actions are right, people agree, even if the action seemed wrong. D. All of the above. 7. How many teachers in Milgram's experiments continued to raise their stress levels to lethal levels? A. Less than 20%. B. 35%. C. More than 60%. D. 100%. 8. What was the purpose of the robbery program? A. Staging an armed bank robbery. B. Show that people can be influenced to behave in a completely uncharacteristic way. C. Show how people are exposed to electric shocks. D. Show that people like to be told what to do. 9. What is an effective method of convincing people of something? A. Clap your hands loudly. B. Using the power of 3. C. One mention is enough. D. Speak in a soft and quiet tone. 10. What is the best way to show authority in moments of confrontation? A. Speak softly and slowly. B. Use a persuasive sentence technique. C. Avoid visual contact with a hostile interlocutor. D. Keep your hands in your pockets. Wednesday. Mastering the speech of influence. People who know how to influence others are usually great communicators, a key skill that will give you the best results. Whether you are communicating with someone in person, on the phone, or in writing, you need to be as accurate, positive, and persuasive as possible. Your signal should not be verbal. Even your clothes can either reinforce or completely destroy your ability to influence those around you. Today we're going to talk about how to improve communication using tried and true, effective techniques. We will talk about mutual understanding, its necessity for influencing others, and ways to reach mutual understanding quickly and easily. You'll understand what makes each person unique and why it's so important to have a flexible communication style that allows you to influence as many people as possible. Page. We will discuss how to calm an irritated person easily and simply, without infecting his emotional state. You'll learn what words to use and what actions to take in order to win people to your side. You'll even learn to read the eye movements of your interlocutors and understand what they really mean. There is only one version of you. Each of us is as unique as a fingerprint. Although we may appear similar to others, there are always differences that define our uniqueness. Our perception of the world around us, the way we think, feel, and behave according to that perception affects our interactions with others. The same perception also determines what we want from others in communication. By understanding the nature of this process, you can develop a flexible communication style, and this will make you much more persuasive. This diagram represents the core model of neurolinguistic programming, NLP. It shows how we perceive information from the world around us, external events, pass it through our own individual filters, make sense of it, react to it emotionally and physically, and finally behave in the way that seems most appropriate to us. 7. Model of external information processing according to the principles of NLP. We perceive what is going on around us with our 5 senses. But if we try to process all the information that comes in, our conscious mind, which has limited capacity, simply cannot cope with such a volume. The capacity of the unconscious mind, on the other hand, is almost unlimited. It contains thoughts, memories, and desires, as well as automatic skills that do not surface in the conscious mind, but have a tremendous influence on our behavior. Filters and our world map. To protect the conscious mind from overload, each of us has a series of filters consisting of memories, decisions, values, beliefs, relationships, language, and more. We create and remove these filters as we go through life, based on accumulated and current experiences. Since everyone's life experience is different, each person's filter sets are unique. We'll talk more about filters on Thursday. The task of filters is to remove, distort, or generalize incoming information in order to understand its meaning. Thus, information becomes an internal representation of what is going on around us. In other words, it becomes a thought. Associated with thoughts is a state of mind or emotion, that is, a thought can be happy, sad, or annoyed. Associated with the emotional state of mind is physiology or body language. As a result of the whole process, we create an internal world map, which we use to orient ourselves in space. The result of this key model is our behavior, which always seems absolutely right to us, but may be perceived differently by others. Given that each of us is unique, it becomes difficult to influence others and gain their cooperation. To achieve this goal, we need to learn how to build bridges on their personal world map. And this can be done by achieving mutual understanding, or rapport, the term used in NLP. What is a rapport? The word rapport comes from the French verb rapport, literally, to bring back. By building bridges in other people's territory, we connect with people, and there is a sense of mutual understanding between us. If you encounter resistance or negativity from someone you want to influence, it can indicate that rapport is lacking. 7. Rapprochement occurs naturally. It can often be noticed when people who get along well with each other unconsciously begin to repeat each other's body language signals. Body language becomes identical. For example, both interlocutors put their right foot on their left foot and lean to the left. Sometimes the signals are reflected, as in a mirror. If one person puts his or her right foot on the left and leans to the left, the other person may put his or her left foot on the right and lean to the right. Identity occurs most often when you are standing or sitting next to your interlocutor, and reflection occurs when the interlocutor is across from you. Both actions are external indicators that a rapport has arisen. The natural process of identity and reflection is called capture. Capture. The Dutch scientist Christian Huygens discovered the phenomenon of entrapment around 1665. In Huygens' room, there were many clocks with pendulums. The scientist noticed that after some time, the pendulums of all the clocks synchronized with each other. Even if he consciously began to swing them in a different rhythm, the synchronization still occurred. Huygens called this synchronization rhythm capture. Establishing rapport. Of course, it is possible to speed up the process of establishing rapport through capture, that is, by consciously copying or reflecting the behavior of the other person. If you choose this method, be careful. If such behavior is too obvious, it can turn into an insult. The diagram shows the 3 elements of communication physiology: body language, intonation, and words, and their relative proportions. These indicators have been studied by many scientists. The greatest success was achieved by Albert Megrabian, Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of Southern California. 7. Communication segments. The biggest piece of the pie is physiology, or body language. It accounts for 55% of the information transmitted in the communication process. Even if you don't speak, your body speaks for you. However, you lose this element when communicating over the phone, because body language cannot be seen. But you can hear a smile. If you smile, your voice will sound different. It will become happier and more positive. So answering the phone with a smile on your face is a good idea. Let's talk about how you can use each of these elements to achieve rapport. Physiology 55%. Start by copying or mirroring your interlocutor's posture, gestures, and movements. Be careful not to imitate in the forehead. For example, if the person is sitting across from you and suddenly crosses his legs, leans forward, rests his elbow on the table, and rests his chin on his hand, do not immediately do the same. It will be too obvious and may seem offensive to the person. Make small movements, one by one, and gradually approach the pose of the person you are talking to. Page. Much less noticeable is copying the rhythm of your interlocutor's breathing, but it is also a powerful means of establishing mutual understanding. Watch the slight rise and fall of his shoulders, and adjust your breathing to the same rhythm. The last means of copying body language is blink rate. Here, too, it's important not to go overboard. If your interlocutor has a nervous tic, don't cause him pain, don't copy this defect. And in all other cases, it is quite an effective way to create similarities and achieve mutual understanding on an unconscious level. Intonation 38%. Have you ever noticed that when you talk to someone who has a strong accent or speaks some dialect, You unconsciously adopt the same accent or dialect. This is too blatant a copying, capable of offending the person. But it is generated by a subconscious desire for similarity and understanding. Although it can happen during personal communication as well, but it happens much more often during a telephone conversation, when physiology ceases to play the main role and 80% of communication falls on intonation. You shouldn't copy an accent or dialect, but other characteristics of your interlocutor's voice can be copied. Volume, speed, timbre, height, vigor, intonation, phrase construction. Imagine for a moment that the person in front of you is annoyed. What happens to his voice? Most likely, he begins to speak faster, louder, and in a higher voice. You may have been in this situation and wanted to remain calm, but instead of calming down, the person you are talking to becomes even more angry. The reason for this is the lack of rapport. The gap between you is too wide for you to have a calming influence on the interlocutor. His subconscious was telling him that because of the enormous differences between you, you were simply unable to understand the seriousness of his situation, so he needed to screw up his own behavior in order to get his point across to you. In such a situation, you can use the technique of following and leading. If you discern the voice characteristics of an irritated interlocutor and respond in the same voice, you are showing sympathy and building bridges to his world map. This is called following. After some time, begin to slow down the pace of speech, lower the volume and pitch of your voice. If the necessary understanding was achieved, the interlocutor will follow you and calm down. Now you are no longer following him, but leading. This is a very effective strategy. Since the interlocutor reacts at a subconscious level, everything that happens seems quite natural to him and not at all a manipulation. Words 7%. Words account for the smallest portion of communication. If you spent hours writing a speech or preparing for a presentation, you'll be pleased to learn that all of this makes up only 7% of your signals. The other 93% the listeners will get from your posture and manner of speech. In telephone communication, words play a more important role in establishing rapport. Their value goes up to 20%. To use the identity trick, pay attention to the following. Keywords are individual words or short phrases that we like and use extensively. Such words are different for each of us. It all depends on our preferences. Such words include mostly, in fact, you know, okay, cool, for one simple reason. If you notice that a person frequently uses a word or a short phrase, you have succeeded in identifying his or her keywords. When you respond to them by incorporating them into your own speech, you are thereby beginning to speak the language of the interlocutor. I want to warn you right away, you shouldn't repeat key words in every sentence, otherwise your actions will be too obvious. These words in the process of conversation, we more often use those words that are associated with the preferred channel of communication. Visual. I see where you're going with this. It looks attractive. Show me. Auditory. I heard you. It touches certain strings. Sounds familiar. Sensitive. I feel it in my gut. I feel the potential of this idea. It touched me deeply. If you hear a person's speech reflecting a preference for one of these three channels, try to adjust to that person and choose words of the same type. By doing so, you will tune in to the other person's wave and begin to speak their language. What are your preferences? As we naturally communicate through our own preferred channel, we sometimes don't even realize whether it is visual, auditory, or sensory. Read all of the questions in the chart below and circle the answer that seems best to you. 7. Count your answers and write them down. A. Visual. B. Auditory. C. Sensual. The preferred channel is the one in which you score the most points. Types of HACs. Below are descriptions of the 3 types. Try to figure out which description of your preferred channel fits you best. Visual. Usually people who prefer the visual channel stand or sit with their head held high and their eyes directed upward. They breathe at the top of their lungs. When sitting, they often lean forward or sit on the edge of a chair. They are well organized, neat, well-groomed, and like order. They take care of their appearance and sometimes behave more calmly than other people. They don't make spelling mistakes, remember pictures and images, and are difficult to distract with noise. They may have difficulty remembering verbal instructions. Long verbal explanations bore them, and they are quickly distracted. They prefer to read rather than listen to a reading. Ideally, information should be presented to them in the form of pictures, diagrams, tables, and charts. Such people pay attention to the appearance of people and notice small details, such as the style of clothing. In speech, they use visual images. See you later, you look good, in my opinion, etc. Auditory. People with an auditory preference look away. As they listen, they sometimes bow their heads sideways. They breathe with the middle of their chest. They often move their lips, mentally saying words. Thinking something over, they sometimes have an internal conversation with themselves. They are easily distracted by noise, but can easily repeat anything. They are more easily given languages than math and writing. They love music and learn by ear. They use steps, procedures, and sequences to memorize. Such people like to be told what to do. They pay attention to intonation and other features of the voice. They use auditory expressions in their speech. Tell me more. That sounds familiar. I heard you, etc. Sensual. Sensual. People are divided into 2 types. The first type is characterized by slouching, slow movements, and speech. Such people are relaxed and behave in a calm and balanced manner. The second type is more active. Such people talk with their hands. That is, they actively gesture during speech. Even when sitting, they like to rub something in their hands. They need access to feelings and emotions in order to feel what they are doing. They are naturally intuitive. Sensual. People have a preference for tactile sensations. They like to learn by doing acting with their hands. Such people immediately notice a weak handshake, and it makes an unpleasant impression on them. In speech they use sensual words and phrases. I feel it in my gut. Let's connect. I am deeply touched, etc. Eye movements and thinking style. Imagine that you are talking to a person. You are paying attention to the hasi words, but the person's speech is neutral. There is another way to tell if the person is thinking in images, sounds, or sensations. Notice the movement of their eyes as they think about what to say next, or as they think about the answer to a question. With the help of someone, do the following exercise. You have a series of questions in front of you, 5-4A and 5-4B. Take turns asking each other questions. You are A, and your helper is B. For each question, use a grid like the one shown below. Put a pen or pencil in the center of the grid and draw the other person's eye movements as they think about answering the question. Draw exactly what you see. If the gaze goes up and to the right, draw that, even if it is to the left of the interlocutor. The interlocutor's gaze may move in several directions before an answer is given. That's okay, just be sure to sketch all the movements in the grid. 7. Questions 4A. 1. What does your favorite actor say? 2. What would a pink giraffe look like if he wore dark glasses and strappy sandals? 3. Can you say your full name backwards? 4. What was the headline on the front page of yesterday's newspaper? 5. How would the national anthem sound if sung backwards underwater? Questions 4c. 1. How would a whale sing? Happy birthday to you. 2. How many doors are there in your house? 3. Who was the first person you talked to on the phone yesterday? 4. What clothes did you wear last Saturday? 5. What is 1296 divided by 4? 7. How people think the key to assessing eye movements. When we think about what to say next or ponder the answer to a question, our eyes move in certain directions, depending on whether we are thinking in images, sounds, or feelings. Be visual thinkers. If the gaze goes upward, it means we are visualizing. Up and to the right, to the left of the observer, we visually construct an image of what we have not seen before. Up and to the left, to the right of the observer, we visually recall something that we have seen before. We visualize both with our eyes straight ahead and with our eyes closed, as if we were viewing a picture on the back of our eyelids. Auditory thinkers. If the gaze is directed to the right, left of the observer, we imagine something that sounds like something we have never heard before. If the gaze is to the left, to the right of the observer, we recall something that sounds familiar. See sensual thinkers. If our gaze is down and to the right, left of the observer, we are thinking with our senses, that is, kinesthetically. It may be an emotion, or maybe we imagine the physical sensation of touching something. If the gaze is down and to the left, to the right of the observer, we are listening to an inner dialogue, a kind of inner voice that tells us what we are thinking and feeling. Such eye movements can be used to influence a person. Suppose you're talking to someone and you've just made a suggestion. The person you are talking to is silently thinking it over, and his eyes are fixed on you. You understand that he is thinking in images, and you can adjust your speech to his thinking process. You can say, for example, "I see that you are thinking. Is there something I can show you to make my sentence clearer?" Tip: it is impossible not to communicate. Even if you don't speak, your body language and appearance speak for you. Make sure that the signals you send out are the information you want to convey. Rapprochement in writing. If you are writing to someone and have no idea what channel of communication the person prefers, if you are writing something that many people will read, namely people who use all three channels, then try to strike a balance in your document between visual, auditory, and sensory words. And then at least a third of the text will be written in the language of a particular reader. Here's a small example. We are happy to maintain contact with our customers to show them that we are genuinely interested in their opinions and listen sensitively to all their wishes. The famous Joan Rowling uses this technique extremely effectively and successfully. If you open any Harry Potter book, you'll notice that on every page she strives to maintain a balance of visual, auditory, and sensory words. If you're an aspiring writer, try this helpful tip. Summary. Today we talked about how to influence in the process of communication and how to achieve mutual understanding with others on a conscious and unconscious level. The key model of NLP shows how each unique person constructs his or her own personal world map based on his or her internal filters. Reaching an understanding with someone creates a bridge to that person's world and allows for mutually beneficial cooperation. The three elements of communication: body language, physiology, intonation, and words provide opportunities to be copied and reflected in face-to-face meetings, on the phone, and in writing. You now know your preferred channel of communication: visual, auditory, or sensory. You have learned to determine your interlocutor's way of thinking by the direction of his or her gaze. By adjusting your vocabulary to your interlocutor's preferred channel of communication, you can speak his language, and have a real impact on him. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. How do we protect our consciousness from overload? A. Using a filter set unique to each of us. B. By ignoring your own memories. C. By using the subconscious mind with its limitless possibilities. D. By processing information from the three senses only. 2. What do our filters do? A. Block painful thoughts. B. Separate us from others. C. Lead to an overload of consciousness. D. Comprehend incoming information. 3. What is the fastest way to change a state of mind? A. Environmental change. B. Talking with someone who has a different point of view. C. Changes in physiology or body language. D. This is impossible. Thoughts and emotions are fixed once and for all. 4. What is our world map? A. Our unique way of perceiving the world. B. What we do with other people's memories. C. Three-dimensional map of our neighborhood. D. The way we visualize our thoughts. 5. Why is understanding rapport so important in communication? A. It doesn't matter at all. B. People like to see others copying their movements. C. Rapport helps you better notice other people's gaze movements. D. The rapport helps build bridges to the other person's world map. 6. What are the three elements of communication? A. Physiology, intonation, words. B. Visual contact, handshake, written speech. C. Dress code, smile, gestures. D. Phone, face-to-face, email. 7. What is the smallest element of communication? A. Physiology. B. Words. C. Intonation. D. Following and maintaining. 8. When should the following and leading technique be used? A. When you want to experiment with a new way of communicating. B. To imitate the accent of the interlocutor. C. To calm an irritated person. D. When you cannot copy your interlocutor's blink rate. 9. What does it mean to speak the language of the interlocutor? A. Repeat his key words. B. Copy the pace of your interlocutor's breathing. C. If the person you are talking to is quiet, you must speak louder. D. When talking on the phone, repeat the intonation of the interlocutor. 10. What does the term WCH mean? A. Virtual, auditory, sensual. B. Visual, auditory, feedback. C. Visual, auditory, sensory. D. Viral, healing, failing. Thursday. Working with thought filters. Yesterday we talked about how we perceive the world around us and make sense of its manifestations through our own set of filters. Today we will discuss these filters in more detail and find out how to identify them in the person we are talking to. With this information, we will be able to influence the person exactly as he or she needs to be influenced. The role of our filters is to sift through the enormous amount of information that comes constantly from the five senses. Without these filters, our consciousness, with its limited abilities, would be in a constant state of overload. However, we often delete, distort, or generalize incoming information. Some such filters act like computer programs. Research shows that each of us has a set of either/or programs that can be identified during a conversation. If you have identified your interlocutor's pattern, you can speak their language by copying them. Today, you will learn how to use what you know about filters to develop principles of rapport and influence. Software filters. Different people use different software filters to sort through their own life experiences. These filters can be divided into several, either slash or categories, to or from anything, proactivity or reactivity, internal or external, options or procedures, similarities or differences, global or detailed, type A or type B, to or from anything. Filters in this category have to do with motivation and maintaining concentration. A person who has a to filter knows what he wants. It is quite easy for him to set goals and strive to achieve them. A person with a filter from does not always know what he wants, but he knows exactly what he does not want. He knows what to avoid. He is like a magnet in reverse, not attracting, but repelling. And that can be very helpful. But the further away he gets from what he wants to avoid, the weaker his motivation becomes. At this point, it is important to refocus on the to filter in order to rush toward the goal, that is, to become an attraction magnet. To determine which filter your interlocutor prefers, listen to his speech. Is he talking about what he wants to achieve, career advancement, or starting his own business? If so, you have a person with a K filter in front of you. To influence him, talk about how you can help him achieve his goals. Or maybe your interlocutor is talking about how he hates his job, hates his coworkers, and is eager to quit. This indicates that the person has a from filter. Express your sympathy for him. How can you help change the situation? Together with such a person, you can discuss what he would like to do instead of what he is doing now, because he probably hasn't thought about it yet. Which of these two filters is most characteristic of you, to or from? Example, George. George decided to quit smoking. He was tired of the bad habit. His clothes reeked of tobacco, and the cost of cigarettes had become exorbitant. George decided he didn't want to smoke anymore. At first it went well. He didn't smoke for a week, but about halfway through the next week his resolve waned, and he reached for a cigarette. What was the catch? George had no goal to strive for. When his motivation from began to weaken and George had nothing to run away from, he easily reverted to his old, familiar behavior. He started smoking again. Proactivity or reactivity. This category of filters has to do with action. A proactive person is characterized by the Nike slogan, "Just do it." Such people often make quick decisions and then simply take matters into their own hands and act according to the situation. A reactive person will hesitate to consider all alternatives. What he wants most is for someone else to make the decision and for him to be able to carry out the action he has been assigned. The difference in energy levels often gives you an idea of the preferred filter of this category. A proactive person is energetic and can do several things and projects at the same time. The reactive person has a lower energy level. One gets the impression that he can only do one thing at a time. He most often prefers to have someone else determine his work priorities. In terms of influence and persuasion, you could say that a proactive person will quickly make a decision if your suggestion seems right to him from all sides. And having made the decision, he will immediately want to act. 7. If you encounter a reactive person, you must first analyze his decision-making strategy. What additional information does he need? Who does he need to consult to make his decision? You shouldn't put pressure on such a person. Accept him as he is. Accept the fact that he needs more time to think to make a decision. Only in such an environment does he feel comfortable. Which of these filters are closer to you, proactive or reactive? Internal or external? This category of filters is related to personal self-esteem. The inner person is quite sure of himself and can assess his actions quite accurately at any given moment. He knows what is good for him and resists actions planned by someone else if he feels that they are not suitable for him. Since he is characterized by independent thinking, he is an ideal entrepreneur, able to manage his own business independently. An outside person's self-esteem is usually low. He depends on connection with those around him. He wants someone to dictate to him what to do and set the standards. And he feels comfortable being controlled and monitored. He needs an external evaluation of his work so that he knows if he is doing everything right. To determine your interlocutor's preferred filter, ask, how do you know you've managed to do something really well? The person inside will say, just knows it, and will not go into a long explanation. To influence such a person with him, you need to understand what needs to happen for the feeling of just knowing to occur more often. An outside person will answer the same question by saying that he needs hard evidence. Perhaps he needs a quota or some other type of evaluation. Perhaps a positive opinion from a supervisor will suffice. Think with him or her about what needs to happen so that positive feedback occurs more often. Which of these filters are closer to you, internal or external? Options or procedures? This category of filters is most directly related to the dominant hemisphere of the brain, right or left, that is, the natural tendency of a person to creative, right hemisphere, or logical, left hemisphere, thinking. A person of options is dominated by the right hemisphere of his brain. He needs to feel that he has choices, that he can consider alternatives and use innovative methods. He does not like to follow strictly defined procedures, even if they have proven successful in the past. Procedures constrain him and make him bored. His mind is constantly looking for improvements and enhancements. If an organization needs to change, no one better than this person can do the job. A man of procedures always follows precisely the letter of clearly defined procedures and routines. He believes that if something is not broken, there is no need to fix it. He sees no need to revise or change anything if everything is going right. Where it is important to follow certain procedures once and for all, for example, in matters of security, such a person is indispensable. How can you tell if the person in front of you is a man of options or procedures? Ask if he prefers his work to be free or formal. A man of options would prefer freedom, and a man of procedures would feel more comfortable in a formal environment. A person of options wants to know exactly why something should be done this way and not that way, and then he will certainly check to see if the same thing can't be done better, but in a different way. To influence such a person, engage him in a discussion, and then listen to his ideas. A person of procedures needs to know exactly how to do something. Most of all, he wants an answer in the form of detailed step-by-step logical instructions. To influence him, express your preference in this format, and he will be quite happy with it. Which of these filters are closer to you, options or procedures? Similarity or difference? Imagine that there are 3 markers on the table in front of you. They are the same size and shape, but a different color, one yellow, one green, and one pink. Are they the same or different? Depending on your filter, you will choose one of 4 answers. Identical. This means that you notice things that are the same and similar to each other. People who use such a filter prefer statics and constancy. When they encounter change, it forces them out of their comfort zone and makes them insecure. They prefer to stay in the same job and in the same relationship for quite some time. To influence them, focus on maintaining stability and how you can help them achieve that. The same, but with differences. This means that you pay attention to the similarities first, and then to the differences. People with this filter are open to change, but only if that change develops gradually over time. Unexpected changes make them uneasy. To influence these people, talk about how the changes to come will benefit them in the long run. Different. This means that you immediately pay attention to the differences. People with this filter never sit still. They are constantly looking for variety. Such people often change jobs. Strong relationships bore them quickly. To influence them, offer them something new, innovative, sharp, and unlike anything else. But remember that they will need more variety in the future as well. Different, but somewhat similar. This means that you pay attention to the differences first, and then to the similarities. These types of people are also attracted to change and diversity, but not to the same degree. To influence them, analyze what lies behind their desire for change, and then make an appropriate proposal. Which of these four filters are closer to you? Similarity, similarity with differences, differences, or differences with similarities. Global or detailed. This category of filters is related to a pattern of thinking. The global man thinks big. He is a true visionary. He perceives the whole picture, assesses the distance, and develops a strategy to achieve the goal. He leads the movement in the right direction and deals with potential obstacles when they arise. A detailed person feels more comfortable when information comes in parts. He likes accuracy. He is very attentive to details, plans his steps in advance, develops an accurate and detailed plan that will help him cope with the problems that arise. Such a filter is easy to identify by a person's vocabulary. When a global person talks about his vision, his dreams, he often uses the phrase, in general. He can't stand going into details and planning everything down to the last detail. To influence such a person, fully immerse yourself in his vision, and then think about how you can help him achieve his goal without a tedious chore and delving into the minutiae and details. A detailed person will speak very precisely and measuredly. He often uses the word stages, which indicates the degree of his concentration, one stage at a time, and no further. Such a person works very thoughtfully and carefully. He gets great satisfaction from fine, detailed work. To influence him, ask questions about the small details that he enjoys so much, and then discuss the problems that arise when working in this style. 7. Which of these filters is closer to you, global or detailed? Tip: by identifying your own filter and the filters of your interlocutors, you can better understand them. And then you can change your behavior so that you can work with others on the basis of mutual understanding rather than conflict. Type A or Type B. This filter is close to the global detail filter. Such work styles can be a source of tension in a work environment if strong Type A and strong Type B act together. However, it is very important to have representatives of both types in a team in order to work effectively. Answer the questions below and determine your own working style. Read each pair of statements and check the one you feel closest to, A or B. Then count the number of responses of each type. 7. Which of these work styles are closer to you, Type A or Type B? Type A. If you have a higher Type A score, it indicates that you have a Type A work style. You are energetic, ready to work hard, able to work faster and longer than your colleagues. You strive for achievements on many different fronts, and this leads to the fact that you take on more work than you are able to fulfill. You hate wasting time. Going to the doctor's office, you're sure to take a book with you to read in the waiting room. If you're watching TV, you're reading the newspaper or ironing laundry at the same time. The thought of relaxing on the beach without access to a cell phone or the internet is unbearable for you. It is natural that people of this type are susceptible to stress, and stress they often create for themselves with their way of life. If you are this type, you need to step back and analyze your life. Is there a balance between work, family, and your personal life, hobbies, leisure, health? If you notice a serious imbalance, especially if work is the main thing for you, you need to work hard and correct the situation. Remember that accumulating stress can lead to serious illness. There is no need to feel guilty and constantly prove to everyone what a good and efficient worker you are. Set realistic goals for yourself, both at home and at work. Then plan exactly how you are going to achieve them. What you can't do yourself, delegate it to others. Be ready to give up new projects so that you don't overburden yourself. Make to-do lists to properly and efficiently distribute your energy at work. Learn to rest more. Leave work at a reasonable time. Spend more time with family and friends, and keep fit. Type B. If you score more points on Type B, it means that you have a Type B style of working. You like to do things your own way, and at your own pace. You could be likened to the tortoise in the fable about the hare and the tortoise. You like to work in a team, but you find it difficult to refuse colleagues. You try to avoid confrontation and conflict, but under pressure you can firmly insist on their own. You are proud of your work, but sometimes too much attention to its quality, going head over heels into the smallest details. You want to become a true expert in their field, but it takes a long time. When it comes to deadlines, you should reconsider your priorities. Sometimes you can't set clear goals for your work, career, and life, but it helps you keep your stress levels under control. If you are a Type B, you need to set clear goals that can be objectively evaluated. Don't try to do everything perfectly, it takes too much time. Set yourself a decent standard of quality, stick to it, and don't strive for perfection. Be prepared to voice your opinion when necessary, even if it conflicts with the opinion of others. If you are confident and respectful of others, you will be respected. Be decisive and don't give in to slowness. Try to see the big picture. Type B people often get caught up in making complicated plans and never get anywhere in the end. Summary. Today we discuss filters that act like computer programs. These filters determine how we think, feel, and behave. As discussed yesterday, the set of filters for each of us is unique. There are no right and wrong filters, just one person's preferences are different from another person's preferences. You have learned to recognize sets of either-or filters in yourself and others and conform to them by speaking the language of the other person. This leads to understanding, and understanding makes it easier to influence. To better recognize filters, draw people into the conversation. Ask them questions related to each pair of filters and try to identify their preferences. If you do this with colleagues or friends, share your findings with them and see if they agree with your findings. A small questionnaire allowed you to determine whether your work style is Type A or Type B. These styles are akin to the global detail filter. You are likely to see a correlation between the results of this filter and your dominant work style type. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. How does understanding filters make it easier to influence people? A. We learn to empathize with and better understand those around us. B. We are aware of the information that comes to us all the time. C. We use other people's ways of thinking to our advantage. D. It becomes easier for us to share detailed plans with others. 2. What is the to-from filter associated with? A. With motivation. B. With body language. C. With goal setting. D. With competitiveness. What characterizes reactive people? A. A tendency toward laziness. B. Ability to do more than one thing at a time. C. Spontaneity. D. Willingness to trust other people to make decisions. 4. What characterizes inner people? A. The need for constant praise from management. B. High self-esteem. C. The need for strong evidence of one's achievements. D. Willingness to work indoors. 5. What characterizes a person of options? A. Constant search for better ways to work. B. Need for step-by-step logical instructions. C. Willingness to follow clearly described procedures. D. Willingness to work according to a structured plan. 6. What does the similarity filter say? A. On the constant search for diversity. B. About the first thing a person pays attention to is similarity. C. About the desire for innovation. D. About wanting to change jobs all the time. 7. What is to the liking of the global man? A. Frequent foreign travel. B. Big ideas. C. Detailed plans for achieving the goals, where each step is provided for. D. Clear, measured speech. 8. What is type A person prone to do? A. Leading life the way it is. B. Use the detail filter. C. Thinking big. D. To perfectionism. 9. What does a type B person tend to do? A. Toward fierce competition. B. To relaxing, resting, and doing nothing. C. Constant tardiness and lack of time. D. To perfectionism. 10. Why is it so helpful to understand the filters of your interlocutors? A. To speak their language and influence them. B. To gather members of the same type of team. C. To avoid those of a different type. D. To teach people to change. Friday. Mastering Agile Influence. A number of NLP techniques can be used to develop the flexibility of influence and persuasion techniques. Today we'll look at several presuppositions, or beliefs of perfection, on which NLP is based, and discuss how acting on those beliefs can contribute to your success. We'll look at a number of NLP speech techniques that are particularly useful for influencing. We'll discuss the importance of beliefs of excellence in enhancing your ability to influence, as well as how our speech can undermine your self-confidence. Finally, you will learn how to create a future story through a special visualization technique. This technique will allow you to imagine the future event exactly as you want it to be. This will help to achieve the desired result in reality. You can use this technique beforehand, before any event in which you have to show your influence in the most effective way. The power of beliefs of perfection. Neurolinguistic programming emerged in the 1970s as a result of studying the successes of prominent people such as Walt Disney. Their experiences were studied and modeled, so that the methods of achieving success proven by these people could be studied and applied by others. Today this science is used all over the world. It is considered one of the most powerful and effective methodologies for personal achievement. The principles of excellence, or presuppositions, with which you and I are about to be introduced, will improve your communication skills and make it easier for you to persuade and influence those around you. The person with the most flexible behavior can have the strongest impact on the outcome. So what is persuasion perfection? If your strategy includes a number of different approaches planned in advance, you can easily switch from one to the other to achieve your desired result. If, however, you have planned only one path to your goal, and an obstacle unexpectedly blocks your path, then you will not achieve your goal. This attitude is very typical of people who often say, "This is my way." In other words, if those around them don't buy into their suggestions, they have no spare, alternative options. The meaning of communication is in the response it awakens. In any communication, alone with someone or in a group, the only way to evaluate your own actions is the feedback you receive. You may have experienced this yourself if you were explaining something rather complicated to someone and noticed the surprised expression on that person's face and instinctively understood that the person did not understand what you were saying. And then you continued, "In other words." Then you explained what you had said again, but in a different way. When the interlocutor's reaction changed to an understanding one, with a slight smile or a nod, you could see that he understood. With any influence, it is very important to constantly analyze the feedback from listeners and interlocutors. Tip: the fastest way to change your state of mind is to change your body language. If you're a little nervous before a presentation or meeting, try consciously making your body language signals direct, open, and confident. And this will have a positive effect on the way you feel. You may think it is a sham, but it is very effective, as you will be able to see for yourself. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. If what you've been doing doesn't work, try something else. 7. Einstein said that insanity is the repetition of the same actions over and over again, expecting different results. If, for example, your presentation, which you hope to use to influence and persuade someone, did not produce the desired result the first time, it is likely to do the same thing the next time. Revise your presentation, change it, do things differently. Do what you want, but in a different way. And then the result may be different. There is no such thing as failure. There is only feedback. Imagine you have an important meeting with the head of your organization. Your task is to present your ideas for a brand new product or service that you care deeply about and want to implement in your organization. You think everything is going well, but the manager rejects your proposal. You leave the office feeling like a complete failure. But you didn't fail. So what happened? You just didn't get the result you were hoping for. But you learned a valuable lesson. Use it wisely, and next time the result will be different. When things go the way we expect, we learn nothing. When things don't develop the way we want them to, we have a great opportunity to learn and grow. Consider answering this question. What would you do if you knew you would not fail at anything? If one person can do it, then others can do it too. This presupposition reflects a fundamental principle of NLP. We can model the perfection that other people have achieved. Try to think of someone with an amazing ability to influence. You've probably always admired him. What is it that makes him so compelling? And how do you learn from his experiences and techniques? And then think of other people who you have admired and do the same. Model their excellence, and you can replicate their success. 7. Modeling perfection, a mile in 4 minutes. In 1954, Roger Bannister became the first man to run a mile faster than 4 minutes. Before that time, many experts, including doctors, had confidently stated that a man could not move at that speed. They said the man's heart would burst, his lungs would collapse, and his tibia bones would break. Not surprisingly, the previous record, for minutes 1.4 seconds, lasted 9 years. Who would want something so terrible to happen to him? But Bannister was not only an athlete, he was also an aspiring physician. He decided that it was not only possible, but also within his power. He ran the mile in 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds, a record that lasted only 46 days, and was then broken by many athletes. Over the past 50 years, the record has been improved by almost 17 seconds, and today more than 1,000 athletes are able to run the mile faster than 4 minutes. The resistance of the person you want to influence is indicative of a lack of understanding. The better you understand each other, the more productive your conversation, and the easier it is to influence your interlocutor. If the feedback you get from your interlocutor makes you feel that there is an invisible barrier between you, it means that you have failed to understand each other. On Wednesday, we talked about achieving rapport on the principles of copying and reflecting body language signals, intonation, and word choice. Perhaps, in your desire to influence the person, you missed this important step. Remember that you need to build a bridge and get on the world map of your interlocutor. Without that bridge, there can be no connection between you. Mind and body are parts of the same structure. They influence each other. The power of body language. Do a little exercise. Sitting in a chair, straighten up, look at the ceiling, smile broadly, and stay in that position while trying to feel unhappy. Have you succeeded? Were you able to feel miserable? Probably not. Now try the opposite. Slouch down, lean into the floor, make a miserable face, and try to feel happy. Did it fail again? I'm sure it didn't. So what happened? The mind and body are inextricably linked. They always reflect each other's states. The first time, your body language signals reflected happy thoughts and feelings, and you tried to create the exact opposite, unhappy state of mind. In this conflict, your body language was most likely victorious. Likewise, you were victorious when you tried to feel happy by exhibiting unhappy body language. Tip: people have a stereotypical impression of you in the first 4 seconds of conversation. This perception is based on your appearance. If your body language reflects a negative attitude or uncertainty, these signals set the tone for all communication even before you say the first word. In this exercise, you were asked to consciously try to feel an emotion that went against your body language. Your mind interpreted it as try and fail. There is a conscious allusion to the possibility of failure in the word try. If you use such a word, you are setting yourself up for failure in advance. It is much more helpful to tell yourself that you will do, rather than try to do. Similarly, the mind can't process negative orders because it simply doesn't understand what it's not supposed to do. For example, whatever you're doing right now, don't think about the yellow door. Well, what are you thinking about right now? Surely about the yellow door? If you have negative words and negative instructions in your vocabulary, the result of using them will be the exact opposite of what you want. To get the result you want, always say what you want, not what you don't want. Every problem has a solution. It is an inspiring belief that whatever the problem, there is always a solution, we just haven't found it yet. The solution may not be perfect, but it is a solution nonetheless. For example, in my business, I have seen many times that clients have not paid their bills and have gone into hiding. I would have liked to get the money these clients owed me, but as their companies were going out of business, this solution became impossible. The real solution was to write off the debts and continue my business as if those customers never existed. When we focus on the problem, we create the conditions for great stress. We must look for alternatives that will solve the problem and allow us to forget about it. Memory and imagination. Memory and imagination use the same neurological circuits and can potentially have the same effect on a person. Because memory and imagination use the same neurological circuits, the mind cannot tell the difference between remembered activity and imagined activity. So if you imagine something vividly enough, the mind begins to perceive the visualization as a memory. And the mind believes that since you've done something like that before, you can do it now. 7. Visualization. Linford Christie. In 1992, British sprinter Linford Christie won the gold medal in the 100 meters at the Barcelona Olympics. He was 32 years old, making him the most mature athlete to win such an award. As part of his training, he practiced visualization. He imagined running through an imaginary tunnel when he heard the starting gun go off. Why did he choose the tunnel? To get rid of any visual distractions, opponents, and fans. His auditory stimulus was the sound of the starting gun. In his mind, Christie had run his distance hundreds of times, and of course, he had won each time. And when he walked out to the starting blocks on race day, he had no doubt that he could repeat his imaginary winning run. And so it happened. That's why some outstanding athletes, businessmen, and many other people attribute their success to visualization. Roger Bannister imagined running a mile in less than 4 minutes. Boxer Muhammad Ali created what he called future history, imagining in great detail each round of an upcoming boxing match and then predicting the round in which he would knock out his opponent. He took real pleasure in informing his opponent before the fight even began and then declaring, "I'm the strongest." How to create a winning visualization. If you have a meeting or presentation in which you want to perform at your best, create a visualization of the upcoming event exactly as you want it to be and begin rehearsing it mentally. Use my advice for the best results. 1. You have to be completely associated with the event. Imagine seeing it with your own eyes, as if it were happening all around you. 2. Break the event into stages and build a control plot into each stage. For example, who is the first person to greet you as you enter the room where the event will take place? What exactly does he or she say? What is the next stage, and what kind of control plot can you create for it? And so on and so forth. 3. The more sensory information you can include in your visualization, the better. What do you see? What does the room look like? What are you wearing? What do you hear? Include specific words that might be spoken by those present. Impressive, sounds very interesting, etc. How do you feel? Confident? Relaxed? Include appropriate feelings in the visualization. If you can, even include smells and tastes. You might be drinking coffee or water. If that can happen, visualize that too. 4. Imagine that the final part is the successful result you want to achieve. Imagine exactly how you feel at that moment. Imagine congratulating yourself on a job well done. Influence through speech. When we speak, we usually give our interlocutors an abbreviated, simplified, and generalized version of what we are thinking. As a result, we often miss or even distort certain information, which leads to misunderstandings and the omission of important facts. The language of NLP was modeled on the work of the famous psychiatrist and hypnotherapist Milton Erickson, who was able to bring about startling changes in his clients through communication. The NLP metamodel uses speech to clarify meaning and accurately understand the words spoken by others. The advantage of using a metamodel is that it helps one better understand exactly what the other person is saying. Since a person always speaks through the filters of their own world map, we are often unsure of what exactly they mean. But we can clarify the meaning of what is being said by asking specific questions. And this will noticeably increase the effectiveness of our influence. Here are the basic elements of the NLP metamodel. Non-concrete nouns. This happens when we replace nouns in a sentence with they, or it, or when a noun is only hinted at instead of specifically named. To take things literally, ask the questions who or what specifically. For example, they're making a decision today. Who exactly? It's always been done that way. What exactly? Unspecified verbs. With verbs, it is the same as with nouns, but we are talking about verbs that are not able to convey enough information to make the meaning of the message clear. In that case, one might ask, how exactly? For example, I had helped to do it. How exactly? Just go do it. How exactly? Comparisons. Comparisons are often used in advertising, where a product is called the best, without specifying what it is compared to. Clarify the meaning of what is being said by asking, compared to what? For example, this product is better. Compared to what? He's at his worst today. Compared to what? Judgments. Judgments are like comparisons. In this case, a point of view is made without specifying whose point of view it is. Clarify the meaning of what is being said by asking whose judgment it is and or what it is based on. For example, it's the best product on the market. By what criteria is it the best? This is the best work. In whose opinion? Nominations. They are also called abstract nouns. Nominalizations are nouns that have been formed from verbs. As nouns, they become more indefinite and insensible than the original active verbs. The verb to teach turns into the static noun, learning. To clarify the meaning, turn the nominalization back into a verb and ask for clarifying information. For example, I've had good training at home. Who trained you? How was it done? We had lengthy discussions. What exactly did you discuss? Modal operators of possibility. They are words that reflect our beliefs about what is possible for us and what is not. They may reflect limiting beliefs. They can be analyzed by asking, what would happen if you did this? Or, what's stopping you? For example, I can't perform in public. What happens if you do speak? I can't talk to him. What's stopping you? Modal operators of necessity. They are similar to possibility operators, but reflect needs rather than beliefs. They can be analyzed with similar questions. For example, I have to be the last one out of the office. And what happens if you're not last? I have to learn how to do it. And what happens if you don't learn? Universal generalizers. These are absolute generalizations that allow no exceptions. They use words like all, every, always, and never. They can be challenged by a reflection or question about possible exceptions. For example, I never remember other people's names. Never? Isn't there a single person whose name you remember? I always make bad decisions. Always? Haven't you ever made a decision that turned out to be the right one? Complicated equality. Two statements are related in such a way that they mean the same thing, but in reality, they may be based on false assumptions. Clarify their meaning by asking how one statement can mean the other. For example, he doesn't go to the weekly meetings anymore. He must be very busy. How could his absence mean he's too busy? She doesn't call me anymore. I must have offended her. How does her not wanting to call mean you've offended her? Presuppositions. Presuppositions, a term used in NLP to refer to beliefs in a speech context, means assumptions that may or may not be true. Clarify the meaning of such assumptions by asking the question, what makes you believe that? For example, do you like blue or red? What makes you think I want to buy one of them? What do you say when you come to a meeting? What makes you think I'm going to a meeting? What makes you think I'm going to speak? Causes and consequences. Although such expressions are similar to complex equality, in causal statements one statement is the cause of another. This can lead to an inadequate allocation of responsibility, especially in an emotional setting. Here's an example. By saying, by doing that, you made me terribly angry. You stated that the other person has complete control over your emotions, when in reality, we determine our own emotions. Clarify the meaning of the statement by asking how one element can produce another. For example, I wish I could exercise more, but I don't have time. What would have to happen for you to have time to exercise? I wanted to say something, but I knew he would take my words the wrong way. How do you know he would take your words the wrong way? Mind reading. This happens when a person assumes that he or she knows what the other is thinking. We often base our assumptions on what we ourselves would think or feel in a similar situation, and we project these assumptions onto the other person. In addition, such errors are sometimes the result of misinterpretation of body language signals of the interlocutor. You can ask for clarification by asking, "How do you know this?" For example, "I know you don't like my idea. How can you know that for sure? She's ignoring me. How can you be so sure?" Summary. Today we discussed a number of key principles of NLP in order to increase the flexibility of your style of influence. The more flexible you become, the easier it will be for you to act impromptu in any situation where you need to influence others. The quality of your speech will determine the quality of the results you achieve. You have already understood how getting rid of the word "try" and negative instructions can change the results achieved for the better. You have learned that conscious use of speech affects not only others, but yourself as well. You have learned how to create and use effective visualization, a technique used by many very successful people. They mentally rehearsed their future achievements. We also talked about a speech metamodel in which questions are used to clarify the true meaning of what is being said, avoid misunderstandings, and create opportunities to influence people in the conversation. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. What is NLP? A. Neurolinguistic procedures. B. New linguistic acceptance. C. Neurolinguistic programming. D. Neurotic linguistic principles. 2. What is the easiest way to get your words right? A. Ignoring feedback is completely unnecessary when communicating with another person. B. Repeat what you say louder and louder until you are understood. C. Paying attention to your interlocutor's feedback and adjusting your speech accordingly. D. Repeating what was said over and over again in exactly the same way. 3. What is the easiest way to achieve a goal? A. By creating several options leading to the goal. B. Having developed one well-designed route. C. Continue in the same way, even if you don't get results right away. D. Satisfied with any result, even if it is not what you wanted. 4. How should problems be treated? A. Some problems simply have no solution. B. Every problem has a solution, even if it is not perfect. C. You have to think about the problem all the time. It gets rid of stress. D. The solution must be perfect, otherwise it makes no sense. 5. How did an athlete break Roger Bannister's record of running a mile in less than 4 minutes? A. By modeling perfection. B. By ignoring the comments of skeptics. C. By competing with each other. D. By improving your physical fitness. 6. How do you know that you have reached an understanding with your interlocutor? A. He resists your ideas. B. It begins to copy and mirror your body language signals. C. You come into physical contact with him. D. You feel you can read his mind. 7. What is the easiest way to change your state of mind? A. Order the brain to process negative orders. B. Change the body language. C. Leave the room for a few minutes and part ways. D. Saying what you don't want in order to get what you want. 8. Why shouldn't the word "try" be used when influencing someone? A. It makes you weak. B. It is incomprehensible to the mind. C. Its meaning is too vague. D. The mind interprets it as a possibility of failure. 9. What is an NLP metamodel? A. A way of hiding your own feelings. B. The way to communicate effectively with people. C. a way of using speech to clarify what is being said. T. Modeling technique. 10. What is visualization? A. A mental rehearsal of a future situation. B. The ability to see yourself running through a tunnel. C. Sensory overload. D. Dreams. Saturday. Effective persuasion techniques. Today we're going to talk about a number of effective persuasion techniques that will further enrich your range of options. Listening is a very useful communication skill, a key skill for influencing people. A good listener will easily recognize all the important clues in the behavior of the interlocutor, which can be buying signals, and then change his offer in the most attractive way for him. We will discuss the 3 levels of listening, as well as the ones you should never use if you need to influence someone. I will tell you about 2 tried and tested formulas of persuasion, FAB and IDA. You will learn how to incorporate them into your marketing activities and use them in the sales process as well as in conversations. Scientists have carefully studied which words have the greatest impact and are most often used in so-called persuasive literature. Today you will learn why these 15 words are so effective. Sometimes it's obvious, but some may surprise you. We'll revisit the topic of emotional triggers, which work great in a variety of situations, particularly at networking events. 3 levels of listening. If hearing is a function, you have ears, and they perceive sounds, then listening is a skill. And the more you develop this skill, the more effective your communication becomes, and the easier it is for you to influence people. There are 3 different levels of listening. Level 1, inner listening. At this level, the listener is focused on himself. He interprets what he hears in the sense he puts into it. If something comes to his mind, he interrupts the speaker to share his thought. This is a very selfish type of listening. Continuing to interrupt is a sign of disrespect. If you want to influence your interlocutor, never use the first level. Level 2, concentrated listening. It is attentive listening with total focus on the speaker. The listener may lean forward, totally absorbed in the conversation. He pays attention to the body language signals of the interlocutor, his intonation and choice of words, as well as such elements as energy, expressions, inner meaning of what was said, etc. This type of listening is most useful in personal communication. Level 3, global listening. This skill is also called 360-degree listening. The speaker is perceived as part of the overall environment. The listener recognizes, signals, and perceives information through intuition. This type of listening is used by the best stand-up comedians. They interact with the listeners and precisely choose the moment for the best witticisms, which allows for maximum effect. This skill is best used during a presentation or with a group of people you want to influence. Tip: as with any skill, the more you practice effective listening, the more competent and influential you become. 7. FAB claims. When we take in information, each of us thinks first of all about what it can give us. Consequently, whatever you want to convey in the process of influencing the other person must be of some value to the interlocutor. In order to maintain interest, the interlocutor must sense this value fairly quickly. In order to successfully achieve this goal, you must use FAB statements. FAB is an acronym that stands for feature, advantage, benefit. Such statements are constructed as follows. Properties: you should describe your product or service or focus on a specific feature. Because. Benefits: this describes what the product/service/specialty does. It can/you can. Benefits: this explains why benefits are really beneficial. And that means, here's a little example. Because this cell phone has a built-in camera, it can take pictures and even shoot a short video clip, which means you never miss an opportunity to take a good picture. Such statements follow the traditional properties and benefits format, but adding the element of benefits increases the number of levels of benefits, which makes such sentences even more convincing. It's always a good idea to prepare a few such statements in advance of a situation in which you will need to influence other people. Use the table below and make up 3 examples yourself. For each, think of a specific aspect of your product or service, ideally one that is unique to you or your organization. 7. Preparing several such statements in advance will give you the flexibility you need. Depending on the clues you can spot in your interlocutor during your attentive listening, you can choose the right one from among them. Perhaps the interlocutor will talk about some problem he or she has. If you can phrase your statement in such a way that the interlocutor sees it as a solution to his problem, he will definitely be interested in what you have to offer. IDA. This is another formula that has proven to be effective in influencing people to become interested in marketing offers. The name has nothing to do with Verdi's opera, although the association contributes to better recall. The name is also an acronym: attention, interest, desire, action. Warning: catch the reader's attention with a striking statement that is relevant to him and at the same time related to your product or service or to a problem that the interlocutor may not yet be aware of. Interest: generate interest by focusing on the benefits and advantages, but don't get carried away with the properties, as in traditional advertising, and demonstrate them visually. Desire: convince the reader that they really want your product or service, because by doing so they will meet their needs or solve a problem. Action: tell the reader what to do next. What action should you take to buy your product or take advantage of your offer? Example: warning: do you have old cell phones that you no longer use? Interest: did you know that they can cost quite a bit of money? Desire: we buy old cell phones and are willing to pay a good price for yours. Action: go to our website right now and find out how much your old cell phones are worth. And then just send them to us, and you'll get a check for a decent amount. This formula works great in letter formatting. Compose your letter so that each IDA letter is connected to a single paragraph, and the entire text calls for action. 15 words that have the most impact in marketing. Research shows that some words have a particularly powerful effect on people, especially if they affect both the conscious and unconscious levels of the mind at the same time. A list of 15 words was compiled by Carrie L. Johnson, and I list them in my book with his kind permission. These are the words that have the greatest impact on people. If you look closely at advertisements in newspapers and magazines, if you pay attention to billboards and slogans, and if you listen to radio and television commercials, you will notice that these words are repeated constantly. 7. Tip: since all of these words are very effective in both oral and written speech, keep the list handy and near your phone so you can periodically insert them into a conversation and have a stronger impact on people. 7. Using persuasion techniques. Choose a few of the benefits and advantages identified in the FAB affirmation exercise and compose a letter, regular or email, using the IDA formula, with one short paragraph for each element. Try to use as many words as you can from the list above, but make sure your letter is not too long. Additional persuaders. On Wednesday, we talked about how people have their preferred channels of communication: visual, auditory, or sensory. Not only do they speak through these channels, but they also like to be communicated to and influenced through their preferred channels. If you are communicating in person, and you can tell from your interlocutor's language and eye movements which channel they prefer, then you need to think about the following. People who prefer the visual channel. What evidence do they need to see to be sure? Can you show them examples, drawings, tables, diagrams, or even a short video clip? Don't go into long verbal explanations, because your listeners will immediately lose interest in the conversation. In addition, they will pay special attention to your appearance, noting many more details than other listeners. So be very attentive to your appearance. People who prefer the auditory channel. What do they need to hear to be sure? These people like to have every action broken down into steps, procedures, and sequences, so structure your presentation that way. Vary your intonation, speed of speech, and volume of voice because they like it. People who prefer the sensual channel. What do they have to feel to be sure? These people are guided by intuition. When evaluating something, they rely on tactile sensations. If you can give them a sample of your product, they will appreciate it. They learn with their hands. If you can demonstrate something and then offer to try the same thing yourself, it goes to your advantage. Such people immediately pay attention to a handshake. Shake their hand firmly, but don't try to break all the bones. The law of reciprocity. It is human nature that when someone does something good to us, we feel the need to return the favor and do something good. This is called the law of reciprocity. It also applies to communication. If you take a genuine interest in a person, asking him questions and listening carefully to his answers, sooner or later there will come a moment when he will say to you, "And you? What do you do?" People like to be listened to. That's the good you can do them. So never slip into first-level listening. In 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, 1989, Stephen Covey defines habit number 5 as follows. Seek first to understand and only then to be understood. He argues that most people listen with the intention of saying something of their own rather than with the desire to understand, and this affects the quality of listening. He also suggests that we are much more willing to speak out and be understood than to understand the other person. If you find yourself at any networking event, you'll notice that this happens all the time. If you become someone who asks questions and listens carefully to the answers, you will be able to make the most favorable impression on your interlocutors. The law of scarcity. Whenever we find out that something is in short supply, we immediately want it. Even if the news of a possible shortage of a product is just a rumor, we immediately want to stock up on it in case the rumor is true. This is the case with gasoline, for example. If it appears in the newspapers that for some reason there may be a shortage of gasoline at the gas stations, queues are immediately formed. People sit in line for hours, sometimes just to fill up almost a full tank. As a result, gas stations do run out of gasoline, and rumors of a shortage become a reality. So how can this law be used? If you're starting to advertise a product or service, think about creating some limits to create scarcity and increase desire. For example, there are only 7 spots left. Offer expires Friday at midnight. The model is off the market, only 2 copies are left at this price. Emotional triggers. Since we like to buy what we want rather than what we need, emotions play an important role in our behavior. For example, Bob Geldof awakened people's emotions and guilt with his Live Aid project. He managed to raise £40 million, $60 million, for the suffering and starving people of Ethiopia. Another curious and interesting example of an emotional trigger is the striking interest in pictures of cute kitties that has swept the internet. Several independent studies have shown that if you want to attract interest in a business page on the internet and increase the number of visits, you should put a picture of a seal on it. Honestly, I suspect that a picture of an adorable kitten sitting on your keyboard will work even better, but a regular picture of a cat works too. And do what you want with it. Summary. Today, you learned a number of proven effective persuasive techniques. In order to influence people, we must be able to communicate effectively. One of the most important communication skills is good listening. If you are a level 1 listener, you will need to work on yourself to master levels 2 and 3. FAB and IDA techniques are also very effective. Get to know them so that you can naturally use them in the process of conversation and influence the interlocutor. It's also worth learning how to freely use the 15 words that have the strongest impact on people. By communicating information to people through their preferred channels of communication, you increase your own credibility. You can also increase influence by using the laws of reciprocity and scarcity, and by acting on emotional triggers. Questions. You will find the answers at the end of the book. 1. What is level 3 listening? A. You talk more than you listen. B. The best way to listen in person. C. The best way to listen when talking to a group of people. D. Focusing on your own inner dialogue. 2. What does the abbreviation FAB mean? A. Feature, advantage, benefit A. B. Feature, adaptability, brightness. C. Fitness, advancement, benevolence, fitness, advancement, benevolence. D. Flexibility, assistance, benison, flexibility, assistance, blessing. What does the abbreviation IDA mean? A. Administration, influence, design, action, administration, influence, design, action. B. Audience, interest, designer, animation, audience, interest, designer, animation. C. Attendance, individuality, desire, activity, attendance, individuality, desire, activity. D. Attention, interest, desire, action, attention, interest, desire, action. 4. How many words are considered the most influential in marketing? A. 15. B. 18. C. 25. D. 35. 5. How should you influence a person who prefers the visual channel? A. Through visual evidence. B. Suggesting that he sing a duet with you. C. With long verbal instructions. D. Through tactile sensations. 6. What is the law of reciprocity? A. The desire to be understood first, and only then to understand the interlocutor. B. If you have done good to someone, that person will want to repay you. C. People like to be listened to, so you should use level 1 listening. D. Stock up in case of possible shortages. 7. What is the law of scarcity? A. There's enough for everyone. B. If we think there may be a shortage of something, we immediately think we don't need it. C. Scarcity makes the item less desirable. D. If we think something is very little, we want it right away. 8. What are emotional triggers? A. Small brain impulses in response to stimuli. B. External signals to stop buying. C. Appeal to guilt. D. Photos of snakes and other reptiles on your business Facebook page. 9. Who is able to have the greatest impact? A. Those who say the most. B. Those who listen well. C. Level 1 trainees. D. Those who do not use words like good, love, new. 10. Why should you listen carefully to your interlocutors? A. To sense when the interlocutor begins to use words of influence. B. To recognize an interlocutor's keys and copy them to exert influence. C. To show that you have a strong character and that you won't let him leave until he agrees to your proposal. D. So you don't have to say anything. Surviving hard times. Difficult times create fewer problems for those who know how to persuade and influence others. In the process of persuading or influencing, remember that even if you are not literally selling a product or service, you are still selling something: your ideas, your point of view, or even yourself. For example, in a job interview. This means that even if you're not in direct sales, it's always a good idea to have these skills. Don't forget the famous phrase, "If you can sell, you'll never be out of a job." Here are 10 tips to help you increase your influence and understand that even hard times can be turned into great times. 1. A polished shoe will help you shine. Susan held an executive position in a large international corporation with a strong masculine culture. She was married and had children, which made her accomplishments in such an environment even more unusual. Every Sunday, she cleaned all the shoes she was going to wear during the week. No matter how busy her home life was, at work Susan always looked impeccable from top to toe. The next time you're on the train, pay attention to the passenger's shoes and then take the time to polish yours. Do not make the mistake of believing that no one will pay attention to your shoes. 2. Live your passion. People who turn what they passionately believe into action get results. They change our world. We saw Bob Geldof turn his passion into Project Live Aid and raise £40 million, $60 million, to alleviate the suffering of the people of Ethiopia. We have seen how Anita Roddick used personal values and beliefs in the concept of the body shop and the impact she was able to have on trade with developing countries and the ban on testing cosmetics on animals. When you live your passion, you increase your influence, you start to be believed, you gain credibility. Ask yourself if you believe in what you are doing. What needs to happen for you to have a true passion for what you do? Write down everything that pops into your head, and then take the first step toward turning those ideas into reality. 3. Become a phenomenal listener. The best communicators and influencers, and especially salespeople, usually don't talk too much. They listen carefully. Everyone likes to be listened to. This is how a person feels valued and respected. In addition, if you ask questions during a conversation, you direct the course of the conversation. If you listen carefully to the answers of the interlocutor, you can easily identify his criteria for persuasion or buying signals. And then all you have to do is adjust your offer to these criteria and achieve the desired result. Remember, listening is a function, but listening is a skill that can be perfected with each new conversation. 4. Use persuasive sentences. Persuasive sentences, which we discussed on Tuesday, are one of our most powerful communicative tools. Using the 4-part structure in verbal or written communication always yields good results. This technique works best when you consciously use a precise formula. Don't be too verbose, as this will weaken the impact of your signal. First, think about a past situation in which you needed to be more assertive, and then craft a first version of a persuasive sentence. Revise it as much as necessary until you feel you have succeeded, and then repeat the same thing with another situation from the past. Practice will help you make this a natural technique for yourself. 5. Motivate yourself with magnets. We all know how to motivate ourselves, although it can be especially difficult to do so in difficult times. On Thursday, you and I discussed the concept of to-from filters, comparing them to magnets that attract and repel. Use them as effective motivators first in the from sequence and then in the to sequence. For example, imagine that you need to make an important presentation and convince the audience to accept your proposal. You have carefully prepared and even assumed that your ideas might be rejected. Imagine getting up and giving a presentation out of hand. You didn't prepare well, the audience didn't pay attention to what you said, got up and left. As a result, you lost your job. Feel the pain of such a development. Now think of it this way. You were well prepared. You were eloquent. You spoke passionately and persuasively. Your listeners listened to your every word, smiled, nodded, and accepted your proposal. Your boss shook your hand and congratulated you on a job well done. Feel how good it feels. Now get to work on your presentation. 6. Imitate your heroes. In this book, we've talked many times about famous people who can have an impact on those around them. You probably have people you admire. Make a list of 6 role models, pick one person, and analyze how he did what he did. Your task is to find out what his goals were and why, what his motivation was, what his values and beliefs were, and how he influenced those who supported him. Analyze all of his success tactics. Finally, pick out a few of his traits and actions that have inspired your admiration, and focus on how you can develop similar traits in yourself. If you dedicate just 1 month to studying one of your heroes, you will then have mastered a number of important and proven success strategies in 6 months. Constantly develop a network of communication. In difficult times, networking becomes especially important. When going to business events, bring along plenty of business cards. Ask people in attendance about their business. Ask how you can help them. This type of behavior triggers the law of reciprocity, and you are sure to get the opportunity to tell them what you need to know. Exchange business cards. After the event, send thank you emails to your new acquaintances, remind them of your conversation, and tell them how much you enjoyed talking to them. Don't forget about social media, such as LinkedIn. Get to know the contact list of people you know. When you find someone you'd like to connect with, reach out to someone else you know and ask them to introduce you. Remember that networking is a two-way street. The more you help others, the more they will want to reciprocate and help you. 8. When an opportunity presents itself, take it. There is always an opportunity to impress and influence others, and you should prepare for that opportunity. At business events, take the chance to promote yourself and your business in 60 seconds. To be remembered, introduce yourself by saying your name twice. My name is Alex Smith. Try speaking in an elevator voice. Consciously speak as you would in an elevator to the person you want to impress. Tell them what you do, who you work for, and what benefits your offer promises. It's always good to have a specific offer handy. Always keep your business cards with you, even on vacation. You never know when an interesting opportunity will present itself. 9. Become your own showcase. It is always important to dress in a way that makes a favorable impression and influences your audience. Never forget body language signals. If you have a presentation to give, rehearse everything beforehand. Do it in front of a mirror. Ask a friend or colleague to observe you, who can honestly evaluate you, or record your presentation on a video camera. Try to get rid of annoying habits. You should not rub your hair or constantly click a ballpoint pen. Pay attention to the number of stutters in your speech. All this can spoil the impression of an otherwise flawless speech. The only way to succeed is to practice, practice, and practice. If you learn how to speak so that people listen to you, you'll gain authority, and you'll be able to influence those around you. 10. Think big. It is known that during economic downturns, there are often extremely successful entrepreneurs. Some start their own business because they are unemployed. Others decide to part with a cozy, safe job that is holding them back. Creating a successful business requires to have a dream is something exciting and high. To have unwavering faith in your ability to realize this dream. Know that there is a market for your offer. Be willing to do whatever it takes to make your dreams come true. In difficult times, it is very easy to give in to fear and lay down your arms. But fear is just a false expectation of reality. What would you do if you knew you would never fail at anything? Answer this question and write down your answers. Cover all areas of your life, and then choose the one that is most important to you and formulate your dream based on your answer. And then make a plan to turn that dream into reality. Ask yourself, what does it take to make it happen? Then ask, what needs to happen next? Whatever answers your mind gives you, write them down. This process is very important because if you are unable to make a plan, that plan will inevitably fail.